Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 332. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Raygun. Chris, all decked out in your Xbox gear, your Xbox Live shirt and your ODST hat and your mask background. I think you're in the wrong place. How are you today, Mike?
I feel pretty good. You know, I got a lot of, I got so much, I feel so productive this week. I feel like I got so much done. Just like a nice feeling. I didn't eat this morning though, which is unfortunate. So this is going to be one of those other episodes where at the end of it, I'm probably going to say, ow, I'm hungry.
Or is it one of those rare episodes where you pretend you're not eating, but you do eat?
No, not no more. Not no more.
Not no more. By the way, I don't really mind people, like, as long as the mics are off, if you're like having a little snack and there's other people on the show and it can kind of circulate around. Some people are a little too comfortable talking on or eating when the mics are on. It's a little much, in my opinion.
Mouth noises.
The worst.
Man.
I love the mouth noises. It's the best.
Isn't that awful?
All right, yeah. I don't like that.
Dustin Furman, executive producer. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm back to work this week. We already got a tweet about someone leaving, blamed on me. Of course, that's fine. But I feel good being back to work. I was telling you guys right before we started recording, right before I left, I got fiber internet. So I had 20 megabytes up before. And now I have 2 gig up, but my laptop can't support 2 gig up.
That's
so
crazy, dude. You could like send your consciousness on bandwidth.
Oh, yeah. So podcast uploads went from hours to minutes. And it's very, very nice for our type of work.
I'm going to start making capricious edits to the show, and so you can upload it 5 times just to use the internet. You know?
Oh yeah, we got to take advantage. I mean, I'm
V5,
spending
V4. You know,
I think it's $100 a month for 2 gig, which I actually feel for the speed is reasonable.
That sounds great. I don't even know what I pay. I mean, I pay something like almost $200 a month, but it's like the internet and my TV, cable TV, and I have like NFL Network and all this fucking random shit. So, and I've told you guys this before. I do need it for sports, so I keep it. So it is hockey season, it is football season, but I like having TV because it makes me nervous to not have it. And I think it's something like when I was a kid or something, and you would go somewhere like our beach house and we didn't have cable internet and we didn't have TV, and I was like so bored. And there's something about just having access to it that makes it feel okay, even though I never use it. Never, except for watch sports and some random things here and there. But
right. Well, that's like I didn't have TV on 9/11. So the whole 9/11 news circuit, I've only seen after it happened.
What did you guys do that day?
Well, I honestly didn't notice anything happened at school. And then my dad sat down with me and he's like, something real bad happened today. And I think because I was in 2nd grade and I didn't have any visuals from TV, I was like, oh, well, that sounds bad. But the gravity wasn't big until I actually saw it later on.
Did he work for the government at that time?
Yes. Well, he worked for a government contractor at the time. Shout out U.S. Investigation Services here. They work in a literal mine here in Pennsylvania. There's in Boyers. What is it called? Iron Mountain.
They got to put you where they got to put you. You know.
Yeah. So it's under. Yeah. Dude, I got the tour. It's really cool. They have like the Warner Brothers vault down there too, where they keep. They preserve movies and music, like the master recordings. But then there's like a government office that has files, and
they didn't keep it in the middle of a warehouse like MGM did. So when it went on fire, they lost everything.
Right. I think that was the catalyst that they're like, hey, we got to stick this shit underground.
Absolutely the most tragic thing. If you look at all the lost films and all the things that are gone, it's all from that fire, basically. It's like, oh my God, you fucking assholes. It's funny you brought that up because, or that came up because Mike and I were just talking about that, about how funny it was, like people's view, just in like the 60s or 70s. They would the news would go on ABC or whatever, and then they would save it to tape. And then like a year later, they'd be like, we need that tape. Just tape over the fucking news. And like there was like no appreciation. Everything was ephemeral. And
it's
just
like Doctor Who got lost that way. Like all these early Doctor Who episodes, they was just at the news station. They're like,
it's crazy. It's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And I think they really looked at it at that time. Maybe not with the original Doctor Who, but maybe kind of. I know in the early to mid 50s they did where it's like it almost was like a play, where it's like, oh yeah, no one's gonna want to see that. We already did it, and a lot of it was live, you know. So it's just funny they had no view into like how it would evolve, and now it's like unthinkable. It's like you did what? You erased all of the newscasts from New York City for the 70s or something. It's like what? It's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. Anyway, it's good to be here with you guys today. Sacred Symbols, PlayStation podcast. And is anything going on in my life? Not really. I mean, what have I been doing recently? Just bumming around the yard, you know, blowing leaves off the lawn.
Whoa.
I don't like raking. I find raking obnoxious.
What does that mean? What do you mean obnoxious?
It's just obnoxious. Raking a lawn is just an obnoxious task. You like, it's like, ugh, you know, who wants to do this right now?
Is obnoxious the right word? I feel like obnoxious implies. Yeah, I feel like mowing the lawn is more obnoxious. Like raking leaves on a lawn. I feel like if something's obnoxious, I feel like people outside of yourself are annoyed by it. You know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying. I mean, first of all, I find mowing the lawn zen.
You do.
Like I like making my straight little lines and like standing in the street and looking at the work when it's done. You know, I like that kind of shit. But I only bring this up because I have one maple tree in my front yard. Everyone's trees were little saplings when we moved in. Now they're getting much bigger. And it's releasing its leaves at this point, and I've just been blowing them off, every few days with the blower. That way I don't have to rake, and then I just sweep them up. Because I just find the raking, it's a little raking. I learned this as a landscaper. It's a lot. It's not like it's that difficult, but it takes a lot more than you think. It's one of the most aggressive landscaping things you can do. I like picking weeds, clipping little things off the trees and whatever, but it's like so wet. It's like, oh my God, I was like, I'm rowing a boat.
Yeah.
Can't be doing that. Jesus Christ. Why was I so upset about it though?
I don't know.
Right there.
Yeah. Not sure.
Like that was a little bit over the top, but I do understand what you mean. Is it obnoxious? It's probably obnoxious when I play the same song on drums 7 times. That's probably obnoxious to my neighbors.
Yeah.
When I'm like playing, what songs have I been playing lately that they would really love? I've been playing a lot of Korn. They wouldn't know. It all sound. If you didn't know what song was, how would you even know?
Yeah.
It just sounds like a bunch of banging.
I mean, it is. Especially with Korn. It's like whatever the fuck that's.
Dave Silvera, who the Korn's original drummer, he loved doing the specific thing with this hi-hat, making it almost like a disco song, where it'd be like stop, 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 stop. I love. There's like there's a danciness to early Korn.
That's why they did that. What is it? That Word Up or whatever the fuck that's that cover.
Yeah.
In that 80s. It's so good. It's so good.
They're great. They were great. I haven't seen Korn the last time I saw Korn live was like, I think the show was Breaking Benjamin in Korn, and it might have been in 2005 maybe.
That sounds correct.
Yeah. And I loved it. I mean, I was fucking so into it. I loved it.
Yeah.
But I used to just go to any show I could really. So it wasn't like I've gone to shows where I'm like, why did I ever go to this? I once saw Mazzy Star, the shoegaze artist, and I'm like, this is the most boring shit I've ever seen in my life, but it was $20, so who cares? I'm here. I could just check it off the list. Is
that how you say that?
Doesn't exist.
Yeah. That's how you say it, right? Shoegaze. I always said shoegazi because I always like the way it sounds a lot more than
it might be that, but I've always said shoegaze personally.
No, of course. Yeah. I just like that. Because
it's supposed to be like you looking down and being all like navel.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And I like some shoegaze, but yeah, that wasn't for me.
Yeah, fair.
The Field Mice, that's a really great shoegaze band from Britain in the 80s. Anyway, guys, it's good to be here with you guys today. Just hanging out, having a good week. Well, Chris, you live in California. It's not really going to be any different, but it's fucking 80 degrees here right now. Dustin, global warming's here, buddy.
That's
61 here.
It's still 60, a little warm. It's 69 here. Ew. But it's getting colder out here, man. Like it's so weird because I've lived here for like 9 years, I think, at this point, or damn near about. And in the time that I've been here, I have seen the climate change, actually, like visibly and noticeably, like not over like generations, just like in a very short period of time. When I got here, it was like during the drought, and it would be like 75 degrees at night in December, and that would be it. You know what I mean? It would never get colder than that. And now it's like, oh, I'm wearing jackets at 6 p.m. over here. It's crazy.
It's interesting shit, dude. I mean, Mike is 10 years younger than me, so she's not going to know it quite as well as I do. And you guys are too, also 10 years younger than me. But I was telling her, you guys are definitely old enough, but I'm like, I'm old enough now where I'm like, it's getting warmer. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, yeah. I remember being a kid. I remember what the weather was like on Long Island. I remember what the weather was like in New England. I remember what the weather was like down here in Virginia when it snowed pretty often and all the rest. And then people would be like, well, the hottest day on record was in like 1927 or whatever. I'm like, but we're talking about the climate, not weather. Do you understand the difference between those two things? Now, who did it? I don't know. And I don't really give a shit either who did it or why it's happening. Yeah. It's just like, you can't piss on my head and tell me it's raining anymore. In fact, it hasn't rained in over a month here. So I wouldn't believe you, even if you did. It hasn't rained in over a month, which is also a little strange for the fall. But yeah. And people look at that as like a political thing. I'm like, no, it's not a political thing at all. Because I'm not making a political comment on it. I'm just saying it's fucking hot out. And it's bothering me because I want it to snow. I miss real seasons, and especially up where Dustin is, like, and certainly where Mike is from, like the leaves changing and how beautiful it is. The leaves change here, but they just kind of die. You get a little bit of color, but the color, man.
Yeah. Fall color is nice.
So beautiful. Shit. So beautiful. Like when you catch a maple tree dropping its leaves in Vermont in like mid-October and you get it in that 12-hour period where it's fucking orange. It's like, damn, dude. You didn't even think nature can make a color so beautiful. Love it.
Yeah.
Love nature. I mean, sometimes I look at the sky and I'm like, this is the most beautiful blue, man. It's crazy. It's just blue. Just beautiful. Well, sky blue.
What else is going on? Sounds like the 700 Club almost. Where it's like,
I love that. That's awesome. Oh, that's fucking great. All right. Let's get into the show a little bit here. Introduce everyone. So Sacred Symbols PlayStation Podcast goes up each and every week. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free over on Patreon. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. You not only get early ad-free access to this show, but all of the other shows in our network as well. Defining Duke and Punching Up and Constellation, etc. and so on. It's $5 a month is basically the core tier price, but you can subscribe for as little as $1 a month. And we appreciate you. We couldn't do it without you. Without Patreon, we simply would not be able to do this. Ad revenue wouldn't be nearly enough to pay Dustin's luxurious salary. Other perks on Patreon include, other than the ad-free early access to the podcast, is the ability to submit your inquiries to the show on the various threads on the newsfeed each week. So keep an eye out for those. You get access to our Discord, which is apparently more insane than it's ever been. RSS link for all the podcasts if you want to just use Spotify or Apple Podcasts or your podcast service of choice, so you never have to interact with Patreon, and so much more. Sacred Symbols Plus episodes recently. I did a really great episode, I thought, with Gene about Jeff Bezos and his letter about the Washington Post and how that kind of media and that kind of attention on media and difference in media might translate to games. It's a really interesting and deep episode. People really loved it. So I hope you guys go check that out. We did deep dives on specific games. Silent Hill 2 remake, Kinnitsugami, Path of the Goddess, Until Dawn remake, Dead Rising remastered. There are full nearly 2 hour or 2 hour plus podcasts, depending on what you're talking about, for all 4 of those on Patreon right now. Jaffe and I sat down recently to talk, and we'll do that again soon. We did a whole podcast about the future of Ubisoft. And, Diamaro wrote in on Patreon and says, my fellow Americans, Orange Man won. What does this mean for the video game industry? Well, I sat down with Hogue yesterday and recorded a 2 hour podcast all about that. And I really, really think people are going to enjoy it because it's not partisan at all. It's not about any partisan politics. What we did was we selected 5 topics that we thought would be interesting. And we were, by the way, planning on doing this no matter who won. And so we were going to do it for Harris. We were going to do it for Trump. So Trump ended up winning. So what I did was I went through some of the things he said, but also I went through his platform. And I pulled out things that I thought were germane to games. And so we talked about tariffs. We talked about the FTC. We talked about expression and the freedom of expression, speech, and so on and so forth. And we separated it into 5 topics, trade and labor and all of the rest, and how his win and what happened in Washington this past week might affect games. And I think people are really, really going to enjoy it. I'm of the opinion that in a time, and we're going to talk about this in more depth later, where I feel like there's not a lot of responsible games coverage political coverage in games media and in game space because it's so partisan. And that's totally fine. I don't mind that. But it makes me want to lean my shoulder in even more to doing neutral, useful political content. Or at least political content that represents multiple perspectives as it relates to video games. So, because we can't ignore that. And we'll get a little bit more into that later on about how I think it's gone way too far in a lot of different corners. But we did an episode about that. It's going to go live on Saturday. So I really hope people enjoy that. I think they really will. And I also want our political content to just be opt-in. You know, we're all political people. I mean, we all have opinions. That's totally fine. And when it paints the things we talk about on the show, I think that's great. But I want people to be able to opt in. So for all of the many, many people that wrote in about the election, and I appreciate that, and we'll talk a little bit about it later on from a specific perspective when we talk about the ending questions for the show, we'll do a constellation about it. We're going to record that tomorrow. And we'll just limit it to places where people can opt in and not feel alienated. It's the only thing that's really relevant to me. You know, I'll leave it for a little later about what I want to get into more about that. But I think people will really enjoy that episode and feel that it's fair and balanced and focus very much on the things that we're here to talk about. So please enjoy. Ben Fairbanks wrote in and said, "Hey, Sacred Boys, could we get a Black Ops 6 review and spoiler cast? The campaign this time around is genuinely the best it's been in years. Some of the missions are so creative, and I'd love to hear the gang break them down, especially the ending. Deeper thoughts on the multiplayer and zombies would be interesting as well. Keep up the good work and stay slitting." Ooh, we're going to be slitting soon enough. So the slitties. So I would like to get a Call of Duty spoiler cast going. Chris, I know you're playing, right?
Yeah.
A few others are playing as well. So we'll try to get that going. We're also trying to get something going for Dragon Age. And we will do something for Metaphor, but it's going to be a while because I'm nowhere near being done with it. I don't think anyone really is. So we'll have more spoiler casts coming, no doubt. So keep an eye out for those. Merch, lastdaymedia.store. We appreciate you. T-shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, and so on and so forth. Please leave us nice reviews on podcast services. You can follow us on what YouTube? You follow on YouTube, right?
You subscribe
on YouTube. Where do you follow someone? You follow someone. Don't follow me, actually.
No.
Never mind.
Don't follow me. Leave me alone. That's awesome.
All right. My friends, today's episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by our friends at Via. They create these wonderful THC gummies, as well as a bunch of other THC and CBD products for your use. You can find more information right now at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/Via Sacred Symbols, VIIA SACRED SYMBOLS. So as you guys know, I'm a longtime user of THC products, CBD products, hemp products, and so I have a lot of experience in this realm. And when I found out that Via was sponsoring us, I was eager to try out their products as well. And actually, before we recorded today's episode, I took one of their Elevate gummies, which is supposed to help with focus. And it's tasty, and it seems to work so far. I'm really enjoying it. What I was kind of impressed was, first of all, check it out. A whole little box that they sent me, which is pretty nice, right? Wrote my name on it. Very personalized. That is my name, Colin. And they have some gummies here, but don't be fooled, because Via is more than that. They have all sorts of hemp-related THC and CBD products, flower, vape, drops, if you want to get into that. Whatever you want to do for a nice time or simply for microdosing. But the gummies here that we're focusing on right now come in a variety of flavors and types. And this is what I was most impressed with. And this is what I really wanted to get into with this ad today, was THC and CBD is complex, and not everyone wants to take this stuff and just fall right asleep or get bombed, as the kids might say. Most people, and this is what I really firmly believe, most people aren't looking for that, don't need that. They need something a little more subtle. And this is what I think Via allows for people to investigate. So for instance, with the gummies, you have the Revive for relief, and also you have the Flow State for focus, and a bunch of different options as well. And like I said, if you're not into THC or THCA and you want to do something a little more milder, CBD might be for you as well. And they have a lot of CBD products too. These are all natural products. More than 500,000 customers have interacted and bought from Via, which is awesome. All of the products are farmed with American hemp, crafted in America, shipped from America. As you guys know from our own merch shop, this is very important to us as well. It's easy to take, easy to track. And again, if you want to avoid the THC, you have CBD as well that you can look forward to. Again, I believe in hemp products. I mean, this is no secret to anyone out there. And so I'm always looking for new ones to try and new things to experiment with. And it's cool that Via has now entered my life. Did you know George Washington grew hemp? Isn't that exciting as well? So maybe you have a little connection to George Washington. We know how much I love George Washington's hair and want to own a piece of it myself. But that has nothing to do with this advertisement right here right now. My friends, this holiday season, gift yourself some peace of mind. If you're 21 plus, check out the link to Via in our description and use the code SACRED to receive 15% off. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we here at Sacred Symbols sent you. This holiday season, enhance your everyday with Via. Great THC products, great CBD products for you to try out right now. Flower, vape, gummies, all the rest. Especially for people that are more moderate on the scale of what you're looking for. I think this is really a great pocket for most people looking for these products. I hope you enjoy. Again, head to bit.ly/Via Sacred Symbols. That's bit.ly/VIIA SACRED SYMBOLS. Back to the show. All right, let's get into some topics of discussion, stretch our legs before we get into some gaming items. Joseph LaRussa wrote in, said, Colin, I'm so sorry for my mother. That is all. This is a funny story, guys. An interesting story here. I'm walking with Micah the other day in my neighborhood with the dogs, and I turned back onto my street. And there's a woman walking a dog, an older woman, coming towards us. And I've never seen her before, but I was assuming she's just, a neighbor or whatever, and she is. But she's like, do you have a podcast?
What the fuck?
And I was like, oh no. Now, in my mind, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I've been identified, because
right.
A couple of my neighbors, like, we're friends with the couple across the street from us, and they know what I do, but no one really does. And I just want to keep it that way. And just because I don't want people to know too much about me and in my neighborhood. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, my son is a big fan of yours. And it just went on to say, it was like, she recognized me, and she knew, based on what we've said on the show in the past, that she lived in my neighborhood, like in my area. Dustin's been to my house. I live in like a place where there's just like hundreds of houses, if not maybe almost 1,000, like a huge development basically. And they're not uncommon in Virginia. There's nothing like this on Long Island. I don't know. Like, we have neighborhoods obviously, but there's nothing like this enormous. So it's a lot of people that live there. But she recognized me, and she was like, "Oh, I saw the dogs. Like we have Boston Terriers. She called them bulldogs, I think, or whatever. But she was like, I saw the dogs, and we were in front of my house, kind of. And she's like, I saw the pool, and I'm like, oh, so like your son, I guess, knows quite a bit about us. But then I remembered that I had talked to, like, an audience member had written in and said, oh, like my mom and dad live in your neighborhood. I just know that from listening to the shows and you saying something. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. So this is the person. And I randomly ran into the dude's mom walking their dog. So nothing to be apologetic about. She was very nice. Shook her hand, and said, thank you for saying something and all of the rest. But yeah, that happened to me. So I was recognized right in front of my own house. It happens. Joseph, your mother's very nice lady. But it was all kind of a quick flash too, it kind of came and went as well. And I'm glad he wrote in, because I actually wrote on a Post-it note that I was going to talk about this one way or the other. So I just thought that was kind of strange. So Joseph and the LaRussa family, thank you for recognizing me. Appreciate you. James York wrote in, said, hello, sacred men. What are your thoughts on daylight savings time? Can we agree that it's completely unnecessary? Let's just compromise a half an hour and never do this again. I'll hang up and listen. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I thought we agreed a few years ago that we weren't going to do it anymore.
Yeah, I thought so too. I don't know what the fuck happened.
And then it just never happened. I know there's arguments for both. I don't know. I kind of like early nights. I think it's interesting, but it does get old. It's shocking to the system for the sun to go down at like 5. And there's something cozy about it and comfortable about it. And it's very reminiscent, obviously, of the time of year. So the things that come along with the time of year and all the rest, I totally get all that. But I don't know. It does seem weird that we do it. You know, what are we saving anyway? What are we saving it for?
Yeah, no reason.
Well, the argument I've heard is just that if you are someone who wakes up to go to work in the morning, it's better that it's light out for your, the sunlight is supposed to help your brain wake up. So my thought is if that people that work real jobs want this, then I support them. I can deal with, an early night, but it is definitely annoying. And Colin, I'm sure, are your dogs on a set schedule for food?
Oh yeah. They think we're like robbing them blind now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it is annoying, but honestly, it doesn't really bother me. It does bother me though the night that you have to lose an hour of sleep.
Yeah,
that's the most annoying part of all of it. But the night you get a little extra, it's fine. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's just, it seems there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to manage all of this. But yeah, I get the reasons why people do it and why we do it as a system. But I just could have sworn that we were not going to do it anymore, and then it just kept going. It's as if as if no one ever said anything. But I'm pretty sure there was like legislation or some sort of agreement that we were not going to do this anymore.
I feel like I distinctly remember this and being excited about it. And I remember it distinctly because I'm so rarely excited by any amount of legislation. What the fuck do I care about legislation?
Yeah, legislation. Jesus Christ.
But like, whoa, what? Daylight savings is going away? Or I think it was like the opposite or something like, or it would like permanently instead. Because I think daylight savings time is what happens when there's more, like when it gets darker later. I think that's daylight savings, I think. We're back to standard time now, which is like it gets dark at like 5 or 6 or whatever, which I think is disgusting. I think we should, I personally think like, dude, it should be dark at like 7. It should get dark at 7. That should be our standard time. I don't know what the fuck we're doing. Yeah. But,
gotcha.
I guess we just didn't care enough about it.
It's funny, for our anniversary last weekend, Micah and I stayed at a hotel and we got up to drive home, and we were not up early. It was like 10 in the morning or something. But we never are up that early. At least I'm never. And I was like, it's funny, man. There's a complexion to each time of the day. Mm-hmm. And as we were driving home, I was looking at the sky and looking around. I'm like, it feels so early. Like I haven't seen 10 o'clock in a long time. It reminds me of when I was a landscaper and I had to get up at like the ass crack of dawn and 7 a.m., 8 a.m.
Yeah.
It makes me want to throw up just thinking about it. But like what it looks like and how it feels. And it's interesting,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have some info on the potential change.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're interested, this is from CBS News. Daylight savings time is going to begin Sunday the same way the twice-a-year change has for 17 years, only to end in November 2024, but that change won't be permanent. Here we go. Time ran out for a proposal that cleared a major hurdle in Congress in 2022 to end the decade-old practice of making Americans change their clocks biannually. And a new version for the new Congress that took office the following January has been languishing in committees for a year. So basically, no one can decide what to do. And so nothing has happened.
Yeah, like what's the contingent?
Sounds like
what is the contingent that's against it? What is the argument against it? I mean, I guess it's reasonable enough to imagine why would you, or in other words, I guess it would be like, well, why would you want to keep the status quo?
Right.
Right.
I think part of the decision is whether which one do we stick with? The clocks being later or earlier is also part of the conversation.
Right. Yeah, because I guess that's like mega subjective. Yeah, I personally hate it when it gets dark at like 4:30. Like I remember it starting to get dark at 4:30 when I would get out of school, and I would be out of school for like 2 hours at that point, and then the day would be gone, and I would be like, oh man, this this blows.
Yeah.
Dick.
It really does come down like a hammer because it's very subtle in the beginning of the fall as the days get shorter, and then it drops that hammer on you when you change your clock, and it's like, yeah, now there's no ambiguity. You're not going outside at 5:30 anymore.
Yeah, it's just like, and then it's colder. It's a whole thing.
And my neighborhood has like no lights, so it's like street lights. So I would love to just walk around at night and just enjoy the air or whatever, but you can't even do that really without. Who knows if I'm going to get murdered out there or something like that.
Probably not. I liked it. I liked it in LA. Like when LA was the first time that I liked daylight savings or like it getting darker earlier, because I was like, oh, it's usually really hot in LA. And so like, it would be nice to go out kind of early and be able to like not languish in the heat of the sun. Right. And you would get like kind of like a comfortable weather going on, and it'd be like, oh, I could go out in a jacket if I wanted to, but I don't need it. I could go out in a t-shirt and like not get burned at like 6 o'clock. That's nice. But now it's just cold in California anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It sucks.
James, we have no answers for you, my friend. I'm sorry to say. Jose Mendoza wrote in. What?
I was going to say we really expected to have it solved.
Yeah, we were going to tie that all up, I think, but
yeah,
at least we were on that trajectory for a minute. Jose Mendoza wrote in and said, hey, CDC, some of my coworkers and I were debating when it is the right time to start putting up Christmas decorations. My take is as soon as it hits November 1st that the Christmas tree gets dusted off and decorations start getting put out. There was nothing going out till the day after Thanksgiving. What are y'all's take on when it's appropriate to start putting out Christmas decorations? Maybe a slow ramp up with one decoration being put out each day and after the 1st of November. What say you do? The 1st of November is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's 2 months of Christmas. No, the day after Thanksgiving. It's always been the day after Thanksgiving. That's the way it works. And that's the way it's always going to be, in my opinion. Now, again, neighborhood, lots of families. I remember being a kid and being so excited for my dad to put lights on the trees in our yard. Like I loved the colored. Remember the fat glass?
Mm-hmm.
They make them now and they're like plastic bulbs. They're not right. They don't make the right ones anymore, like because I think they're so bad for the environment and they're expensive and all the rest. But it's like the old glass ones with the painted, the blue, that bright blue, that bright orange, that bright green. I loved that shit. And so I would have put that stuff on as early as I possibly could. And you can see that kids have a similar influence on their parents in this neighborhood because things start going out. Also just the Halloween decorations are insane. There were really
they're getting out of pocket.
They are, dude. Like when I was a little kid and even a teenager, no one did this shit. This wasn't a thing in the 80s. This wasn't a thing in the 90s. And it wasn't even really a thing in the aughts, as I recall. But I left the suburbs and went to live in cities for a long time. And then I came back. And now there are 12-foot skeletons on people's yards. Now there are giant coffins on people's yards. And all these spider webs and massive window-sized spiders. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what the fuck this is all about. This was not a thing. You had like maybe a jack-o'-lantern if you were lucky because someone probably came and smashed it at some point in October. But maybe a few pumpkins and gourds, maybe a cornucopia if you wanted to kind of try to fuse Thanksgiving into a Halloween. But I don't know what the fuck's going on here, you know?
Yeah, we had one of those giant skeletons up the road. And I thought we'll often say, like, what if you took someone like a pilgrim and gave them a smartphone? What would they think? Like, what would they, if they saw this giant I think they're like 8-foot skeletons. Sometimes they're so big.
Dude, they're way bigger than that. I mean, the ones I'm thinking of, like, are literally as tall as the fucking 2-story house. No joke.
Yeah, actually.
Imagine how horrifying.
And then I'm wondering, where are you guys putting this? You live in a 3,000 square foot house. Like, where is all this going? You know?
Yeah.
Where are you putting the coffin? Do you sleep in it? Like Alucard?
They have a shed specifically for Halloween decorations and Halloween decorations only.
It's such conspicuous consumption, in my opinion. Like, just this idea, like thousands of dollars being spent on these things. There's just no doubt. Like, these are really ornate, crazy. Yeah. And then people come around the neighborhood and take pictures and show their kids. It's cool if that's what you're into, but I'm just so surprised by how insane it is. And there's a guy down the street that then keeps one of the skeletons on his yard and then dresses it like Santa.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Well, like you got to get your mileage out of that fucking
You're right.
thing.
You got to get your money's worth. It's like me in that custom suit. I'm wearing that thing fucking left, right, and center, baby. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, the Halloween decorations are
good.
I feel like I remember light Halloween. Like I remember like stickers on the window or something. Like I remember they had these like weird, like I don't even know what material. I haven't seen that material in years, but they would have like my parents would have these like temporary stickers that they would put on the windows because we had an apartment. We didn't have like a
right.
We had a house. We had a house at some point. But like early on, I remember like spider webs kind of maybe, and then we had the jack-o'-lantern, but that was really it.
You're right. It was like the window decorations and like the paper decorations, the pumpkin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
From like school and all that. It's totally crazy now.
Yeah, I do.
That
remember
would be
the
like
fake
quaint as hell at this point.
Yeah, I do remember the fake spider webs though. Like the fake spider webs were like kind of like a staple for a really, really long time. I remember, but you're right. Like I remember specifically noticing when we moved into like, I guess what you would call the suburbs, I guess. And people, I remember the first Halloween when people had like, they would turn their front lawn into a graveyard, like a bunch of fake tombstones. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I never thought about like decorating property because we didn't have it.
Yeah.
But even now, it's just like, it's really just Christmas decorations that my family puts up. Like, I don't think we put up like a fucking 15-foot tall skeleton for any, but we also live in a neighborhood with no sidewalk, so like kids don't go to the houses because the parents are afraid they're going to get mowed down by like a Formula One racer. So I guess we just never cared about Halloween in that way.
Yeah, I just think back to being a kid, and it's like, yeah, you had like some pumpkins and things like that. Like 1990, I remember that Halloween for some reason because I dressed up as a ninja, and it's like Halloween lights. What the fuck is he talking about? Halloween lights. But no, that's a thing now. Halloween lights?
Isn't that just orange Christmas lights? Isn't that just what that is?
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. A big thing now, I don't know if you guys know this. You probably even get things dusted in your mail, maybe for like if people are trying to sell this services. Like have you seen the permanent lights? Like the permanent Christmas lights?
No.
There's like services now that will basically install these very discreet permanent lights on your house. And then you use like a service or like, like some sort of app to control them for the different seasons.
Interesting.
There's a few people in my neighborhood that have them and it's cool, but I'm like, I'm not doing that. We didn't even get a pumpkin this year. Like we got literally nothing. And we do like Christmas. I like getting a real Christmas tree. I do that every year. Like we go to the Christmas tree place and I get a real Christmas tree. I love the smell of it. I love the pagan tradition. It feels, and I'm not even being facetious at all. It feels old. It feels like something that like has been going on for a really long time. And it's cool that we still do it because we don't do very many things that we used to do. But people have been dragging trees into their fucking houses for like a long ass time. So I like doing that.
Absence of the context of Christmas, it is a psychotic thing to imagine someone doing. But so you get a real Christmas tree. Are you worried about the dogs like eating the little pines that fall off of it? That was like a concern. Yeah,
they don't. Well, two things. They don't seem that interested in it, which is really funny to me because they're interested. It's so random what they care about, and they just didn't. They would sniff it, but we also just put it in the corner of our living room, and then we put a baby gate around it, and the couch is in front of it on one end, so like they can't even really get to it. But no, so no worries there. I mean, when I had cats when I was a kid, those were the ones that would fuck the Christmas tree up bad. They just couldn't help themselves. Just couldn't help themselves from no matter what you did. Just
that's old genetic memory of them being just like a tree. I must climb it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, here's something hanging from a tree. Let me swat at it over and over again, like this. I miss having a cat. We talk about getting a cat because I love cats too.
Yeah,
but dogs have definitely taken first place for me. Cats are more mysterious, and I appreciate that about them. All right, so November 1st for Christmas decorations.
Yeah, get out of here.
Absolutely fucking not. If someone puts the Christmas decoration up in my neighborhood November 1st, I'm taking it down. And I'll even know. I'll be like, you can get this back on Black Friday. I'll come bring it back to your house, and you could begin again. Because we're not doing this.
Yeah,
we're not doing it. There are really strict rules in my neighborhood from the HOA that no one seems to follow because no one gives a shit, which I'm totally cool with because I like the HOA for like the crazy things, but you're like not even supposed to be decorating early and all of that. But it's like, who gives a shit? Let people do what they want to do,
Yeah.
I've heard HOA nightmare stories, but my HOA is totally fine.
Yeah, I feel like I would just rather avoid the concept of an HOA. I don't like the idea of just like, oh, I own this property and now some nebulous fucking void, like some nebulous group of people is going to tell me what I can and can't do with it. I hate that. Like, I just don't like that. I feel like it defeats the whole purpose of not having an apartment.
Yeah, it is like a neighborhood legislature, basically. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I, as a homeowner now, over these years, I do appreciate it more in the sense that it ensures that none of your neighbors can do any weird shit. Like truly weird shit. Like install certain things or leave garbage in their fucking yard or like cars on their front lawn or park certain things in front of their house and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I think that's fine. You know, as long as they're not telling people like how to live inside their home. It's like, how are you affecting others around you is kind of the point of it. But honestly, the HOA, the only time I ever interacted with the HOA in my entire was for the pool and like getting that all set up. But also they deal with garbage collection, which is actually quite convenient. So,
yeah.
But apparently in Virginia, you can, homeowners association can be eradicated by the homeowners. I think if they vote 90%, something like that, which is interesting. It's a lot of people.
90% is a crazy requirement though, I think.
Should I start a movement?
Yeah. Get rid of them.
I have nothing else to do. I thought you liked us. All right. Not that
much. Taking out an HOA just for no reason other than just like why not is awesome. It's like I thought we had a good we just went to a Christmas party together. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of felt like destroying you.
It rules. I love it. All right. Shall we get into some of these news items?
Yeah.
That we have here going on. The dogs are barking and I don't know why. Okay. Well, the first thing that we want to talk about here is Grand Theft Auto 6. Take-Two released its financial statements and some accompanying documentation. We're not going to get into any of it too deeply, but there are two things in there that we do want to get into. And this is the first one. Grand Theft Auto 5, there's been a lot of speculation. Grand Theft Auto 6. There's been a lot of speculation about Grand Theft Auto 6, Grand Theft Auto 6, that it actually was going to get delayed. There have been some rumors that it was going to get pushed out of 2025. They reiterate multiple times in these documents that it's coming out in the fall of calendar 2025. So this thing is on target for its launch on PlayStation 5, calendar 2025. So about this time next year, probably have it maybe for a few weeks by this time next year. Dustin, thoughts?
Yeah, well, a lot of people are very skeptical of them continuing to say that it's coming out at this time just because of Rockstar's track record of delaying games. And I think that's fair. So I could see it being a possibility, but at the same time with Take-Two continually confirming it, particularly to their shareholders, that does give me some confidence. I'm not sure if they did that with previous games. So maybe they've done the same thing and the same thing will happen, that it gets delayed. But either way, I'm very excited to play it. I'm curious about how it's going to run on these consoles, whether it's the standard PS5 or the PS5 Pro. But yeah, I'm in the mood for a new Rockstar game, just because they're always, it's always exciting, even if you're, I don't know, I don't want to say even if you're not into it, but they always are able to raise the bar in one way or another, even if it's things that don't necessarily affect the game. But thinking about different elements of Red Dead Redemption 2 and the level of realism is something that I can appreciate seeing. And I'm curious now that they're fully on a new generation, what kind of crazy shit they're going to pull off.
It's notable on this list too. I'm reading it now. Civ 7's on here. Obviously we know that's coming February 11th. And then WWE 2K25 is on here for Q4 fiscal 2025. So that would be Q1, calendar Q1 next year. Then Grand Theft Auto 6, fall of calendar 2025. And then Borderlands 4, fiscal 2026. Mafia: The Old Country, fiscal 2026. And then Judas is still TBA, which is very interesting.
Oh.
Really taking their time with that one, my friend Ken and his boys and girls up in Boston doing their thing. I thought they would be more clear about when this thing was coming out by now. I wonder if that's being kind of just not being transparent for the reason of marketing, or if they really don't know. Because it's been a long time now. It's like, it's really time now, I think, to start going on that game. Chris, thoughts? Grand Theft Auto 6. I mean, so as far as I'm concerned, this is confirmation that it's coming fall of 2025, simply because this isn't some sort of throwaway statement. This is they have a fiduciary obligation to be honest in their earnings reports. And they're a year out on the calendar from the game. They should know now. And I think they do. If anything, my theory about Grand Theft Auto 6 is that it's done right now. And that they are massaging it now as much as humanly possible. And it's probably been done for a while. And they're just doing, a bunch of last minute tweaks and work to it. And I don't want to be clear. I'm not saying it's content complete. It's been content complete for a really long time. I'm saying that the thing is probably ready to go. And they're being incredibly careful with it. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. I think they probably could put it out right now and it would be fine. But I think they're taking this. They take their time to really flesh these games out. I'm really excited. It's been a while. I loved Red Dead Redemption 2. I didn't, and Grand Theft Auto I have a kind of back and forth history with. I don't love every single Grand Theft Auto game. I didn't really like 5 that much, honestly. From a story perspective, anyway, I thought 4 was great though, and so it's just I don't know. I would like to see a post Red Dead 2 Rockstar take on a new Grand Theft Auto. I think that would be really. I feel like the bar is raised for a lot of people's expectations, and I think they can meet it. Although it is interesting too, because Dan Houser's gone, and those guys, the writers of Red Dead and many other Grand Theft Auto games are kind of gone. But I don't know what that means for the game, because did they write it already and leave, and the game's just been in development for a long time, or do they really have no involvement with you know what I mean? I'm kind of curious about their involvement as far as that goes. So that's my only kind of point of curiosity or a point of concern, I guess. But I'm looking forward to it, excited about it. It's always an event when there's a big new Rockstar game. And so that's exciting.
You know that meme from Scarface of the video of them on the phone and the money's being counted and all the rest? And that's Strauss Zelnick and the board of directors right now.
Oh yeah, it's going to print
their
money.
Bookings projection is something like $6 billion. And you have to take into account NBA 2K, I guess, which is huge. But that means $5+ billion for GTA 6 in its launch period. That is
insane.
Fucking nuts. And there's no doubt that GTA 6 is the most expensive game ever made. I would assume it's well over $1 billion. And I'm not even being facetious, including marketing and stuff like that, which is going to be crazy too. But you're looking at a game in which that cost 5 times what The Last of Us Part 2 cost, if not more. And that's just an extraordinary bet that you really can only take once a generation with a surefire hit. And the only thing I look at now is what they're going to do with GTA. I really, really want to see if this is the final posture for GTA, which I think it might be. And what I mean by that is there are going to be no more new GTAs. Now that this is if GTA 5 came out in 2013 and is still the platform on which they built GTA Online and all of the things that are making them money now, then you're looking at something in the late 2030s, would they ever reconsider doing the game again? And by that point, things might be very different. So I think we're not going to see much more than this. I think that if it will just evolve into a Grand Theft Auto platform. So it's So in other words, they're really going to juice this for all it's worth, because they can't do it again. And they could go down the PS2 path of making Grand Theft Auto games more quickly and selling fewer of them and still making nice money. But I think that they would rather just take much bigger bets. And that's going to be, we're going to suggest that is the route they're going into with the next piece of news. But yeah, keep an eye out for GTA 6, obviously. I mean, that's going to just consume everything in the fall. And if anything, that kind of confirmation in a financial document from Take-Two as a publisher indicates that others that are strategizing about what to do with their portfolios are well, we're definitely not releasing in that quarter. The September, October, November, or September, October, it would be, let me see. No, July, August, September. Yeah. So maybe both Q3 and Q4, you'd really want to stay out of for that game and just give it due deference. I feel bad for anyone that's going to release a big game in that time. All right. The other thing here is Take-Two has sold Private Division. We knew that they were looking to do this. Private Division, of course, is one of their labels. Take-Two's labels include, 2K, Rockstar, etc. Miguel Almeida wrote into us and said, hey, CDC, with Take-Two selling Private Division to an undisclosed buyer, it got me thinking, do you think PlayStation should have its own indie arm or publisher? Would that just aggravate PlayStation's margins problem by spending resources on games that won't be big hitters? Or would it enable them to explore smaller ideas that entail lower budgets and provide some much needed creativity and innovation? Thanks, to keep up the good work. It's a great question. We have a hint in what Take-Two has decided to do and what Strauss Zelnick said about what they did. So they've spun off Private Division and they won't tell anyone the buyer yet. Apparently the buyer will be known in the weeks or months to come. So here's what Strauss Zelnick told the GamesIndustry.biz. Quote, we made the strategic decision so that we could focus all of our resources on growing our core and mobile businesses for the long term. We're really best at these big AAA experiences. We have the biggest intellectual properties in the interactive entertainment business, some of the biggest intellectual properties in the overall entertainment business, and to make sequels to existing beloved franchises as well as to create new intellectual properties is our mission. The team of Private Division did a great job supporting independent developers, and almost to a one, every project they supported did well. However, the scale of those projects was candidly on the smaller side, and we're in the business of making great big hits. End quote. This is what we've been saying about Sony's strategy for a long time, too. They don't want to make those kinds of games.
Yeah.
I would imagine out of PlayStation Studios that Astrobot is about as small as you're going to get. And that's 60 people, 3 years, it's not really a AAA product. I mean, it's fucking awesome, but it's not the way we really judge. It's AAA by platformer standards. It's like saying a side-scrolling action game is AAA. It's like, it could be by reference to what's come, because those games are all kind of one thing, but it's not the kind of game that these guys want to make. And so to answer your question in a backward sort of way, Miguel, it's like, no. So this is where I think all of these big publishers are going. They don't want to waste time on small games. And that's why I think it was so cool that there are some Japanese labels like Capcom with Kinetsugami that are doing these games, these smaller AA games, which is very unusual for them. But then you find out that the only reason that game even got over the finish line basically was because Microsoft helped fund it. So Capcom itself wasn't even really interested in seeing it across the finish line. It portends ominous things if you care about these smaller games, but not really, because there's just a shit ton of companies that make those games. And these big companies just want out. So Take-Two, I think, saw something really interesting in that, and something obvious. We're going to release Grand Theft Auto 6, and then we're going to release like a $5 million game. What is the point of that? I think that's pretty rational, actually. What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, I think the idea of PlayStation being the buyer and having these smaller games is of course appealing to us, especially if we grew up in the era where PlayStation did make these smaller, really great second party or even first party sometimes games. But it's not in line with what their strategy has been for quite a long time now. I mean, since kind of that shift kind of began mid PS4 generation. So I feel like it's an easy answer, but it sounds like this could be a good option for Microsoft, who's looking for more games to put on Game Pass. Not to speak poorly of any of the quality of their games, just because like I'm looking at Private Division's recent games, Penny's Big Breakaway, really awesome game. Of course, probably their biggest title would be Outer Worlds. I would say is probably the biggest from them. Hades, also huge. And more recently, I haven't played this yet, but No Rest for the Wicked, which I've heard is awesome, but still in early access. So I haven't played that yet. But is
that Moon Studios?
That is Moon Studios. Yeah. So a lot of these titles are the exact type of thing that I think Microsoft would be salivating over, to have an instant guarantee to kind of maybe get rid of some of that, I don't know, the idea of their Game Pass stink, the Game Pass fodder that we have seen here and there pop up, more quality titles. Obviously, I wouldn't want that to happen, but if I had to make a prediction, it would be Microsoft.
First of all, that's really canny. I think that's a great observation that it could be them. And I wonder, I don't know. They are the only major publisher in the West, I would say, because Embracer is. Let me back up. Look at Embracer. Yeah. Embracer was chasing all of this stuff and collapsed in on itself. I just think these are cautionary tales of not less being more in terms of the individual games, but less being more in terms of the volume. They're realizing that the pie exists, the pie is getting bigger, but the slices are infinitesimal. You gotta cannibalize as much as your competitors' pieces of pie as possible because of people's limited time and resources. I think you got to just make smarter, fewer bets. And they're not all going to be GTA. But 500,000 sellers, million sellers, 2 million sellers, 3 million sellers, that's the bare minimum, I would say. And you even saw that with Ubisoft not being happy with selling 500,000 units of that Prince of Persia Metroidvania game. It's like, what the fuck did you think was going to happen exactly? Very strange. So I think this is all kind of drawing back to the mean, which I think is actually good for the health of the industry. Chris, you have anything you want to add?
No, I feel like you guys covered a lot of it. I feel like I also think it's Microsoft, by the way. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add.
All right, let's get into a few other things here. Remedy released their business review of the calendar year so far, and there's nothing really interesting in there to say except for the fact that Alan Wake 2 still hasn't made its money back. We're a year out from release. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I just think it's a cautionary tale about optics, about how big something seems and how important it seems. We always talk about this with Metroid until recently, where like everyone's like, oh, Metroid would be huge. Like Metroid's never been huge.
Yeah.
Because we're really engaged in the industry, we think Metroid's big because we all care about it, but no one really cared about it. And Alan Wake is kind of a similar situation where Alan Wake 2 is a pretty renowned game, and I think reasonably so. I have not played it all the way through. I'm going to do that on Pro, although I hear that it still has problems on Pro, so we'll see how that goes. But it's just more of a cautionary tale about how this company spent a really reasonable amount of money on a game that got a lot of attention, and it underlines the problem of finding audiences. If this game hasn't made its money back at this point, it will certainly become profitable, and maybe the long play is that with them going with Annapurna for movie and TV stuff with Control and the Alan Wake universe and all the rest, maybe their hope is to say, like, let's just get this thing net neutral and then we can just kind of slowly make money off of it as people discover it, if they like our show, if they like our movie. And that might be the entire thing, but it just seems such a dangerous way to do business. You make Alan Wake 2 and then you make your money back and it's like, okay, but you need profit, like lots of profit to make that worth it. And I think I was reading through this document and it reminded me, like, they took out a $15 million loan with Tencent recently. And that to me is interesting. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this. Remedy seems to not be in a position of great financial power. And I think that the deal they made with Annapurna and the loan with Tencent and already certain companies owning small pieces of them, I just worry about their health. Because I just, it's surprising to me that Alan Wake 2 hasn't made its money back. And it just indicates that we are in a bubble. We knew, remember when it came out and it wasn't even on the Circana list? And that was kind of weird. That's like really fucking weird, actually, that it didn't even make like 16 or something. Like, it's like, wait, 16. The fucking random Japanese role-playing games ended up on the list at that time. It's like, maybe this just isn't going that well for them. And I'd really be interested to know how they feel about it, because you don't make games to make your money back. And you definitely don't make games to not make your money back after a year. Unless they were really counting on some sort of second wind, a la The Last of Us, where The Last of Us benefited greatly as a video game from the show. And we learned even from Take-Two that the Borderlands movie, which they acknowledged was horrible, they're like, yeah, actually our games sold a lot more when that movie came out. So they are seeing, even with shitty products, like a bump. I guess what I'm saying is I'm just sounding the alarm that something doesn't seem right with Remedy. And we'll see what happens from there. They have a lot of different partners, from 505 to Tencent to whoever, and some self-published stuff, and they have a lot of irons in the fire. And they have already canceled some of them. So I think we should be keeping a close eye on these guys. And I'm not rooting for them to go down, quite the opposite. I love Remedy. So like Alan Wake and Control are fucking sick. Sick!
Yeah.
And that's the greatest shame of all. And I'm sure Alan Wake 2 is sick too. I'm sure it is. Positive.
Yeah.
So what do you think's missing here, Chris? Why are these games not resonating as much as we think?
I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily. I'm surprised that they exist personally. Like, I'm surprised that Alan Wake 2 exists. Even after playing it, I think it's great, but I also feel like it's a very particular kind of game that's not necessarily like. It almost feels like a Death Stranding in some way, where it's just like it's kind of amazing that there was funding to make something like this because it is so weird and it is so not of the current culture. I guess it's not what I would expect would sell. So I was kind of surprised that it existed in the first place and that it was, that it made it to launch, and it's great. But yeah, I think it's inherently kind of a niche product. I mean, it's a sequel to a game that came out how many years? Fucking 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So, the brand awareness of Alan Wake in the broader like scheme of things outside of the like really, really hardcore people who pay attention to this stuff is probably very, very low. People are seeing Alan Wake 2 on store shelves or whatever, and they're like, I don't know what's the first one? Like, where's that? I think it's just kind of an inherently cult game. It's not quite like a Max Payne or Control, which is like Control's easier to sell. Control is sexy. Control is like, oh, you can edit a trailer. You can edit a trailer for Control that is exciting to like most people. It's telekinesis, it's explosions, it's it's more action oriented, even when it isn't. And so I feel like that wing of that franchise has like a lot higher of a chance to penetrate through the noise. But Alan Wake is kind of like, it almost feels like you ever hear like actors or like Hollywood people say like, oh, one for them, one for me.
Yep. Yeah, that they'll make a movie yeah.
That's kind of how it feels. It's like Alan Wake feels like, oh, it's one for me. And then Control is like, not that they don't want to make Control, but like Control is definitely like, it's easier to sell.
More commercial.
It's more commercial.
It's funny. Dagan says that too. You guys are kindred spirits. He's the only other person I've ever heard reference that one for me, one for you sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
Well, he's an animator, so I guess that makes sense. And he's just been doing one for you, one for you, one for you, one for you, one for you his entire career. So I think it's frustrating to him at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dustin, let's get you on the record here about this. To me, it's important to note that these games aren't self-funded. Epic, I'm pretty sure it funded Alan Wake 2, and 505 is all over Control. It's not that they're necessarily not making their money back that they need to survive, because they get a lot of, they're probably passing milestones and they get the money that they need for the next project and so on and so forth. It's about courting partners that want to make money with you. And if your big sell for Alan, like how could you ever sell Alan Wake 3 at this point? How could that ever happen?
Yeah.
It would be crazy to imagine that at this point. If you would have to fund it yourself probably, and you would be doing it just for the love of the game, basically. And so it's just a cautionary tale about how hard it is, I think, to be independent. And that I feel like these guys are not going to be independent forever. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this a few points, just because it's like, oh, it's still not profitable, still hasn't made its money back. And last time we talked about it, a big part of the conversation was how, number one, it was only released on Epic Games Store and not Steam, and that may have hurt it somewhat, which makes sense being that Epic funded it, but that was a piece of it. And then in addition, the lack of not having a physical copy on the store shelves, whether or not people buy it there, I think it brings a lot of eyes to the game, at least. I think now there's a physical copy, so it's a bit late, but it exists. It's still exclusive on Epic, but I think that even if both of those things were reversed, it's hard to say. I can't just blame it on those two elements now, just because, as we were saying, there's so much that this game had riding for it. It had great reviews, great press, great spotlight at different award shows. So it is odd. I wonder if there's some element that this sequel could have been better or more profitable if it was not so late after the first Alan Wake. And I think in addition to, I think it's awesome from a fan perspective. The fact that it is a very direct sequel to Alan Wake is awesome. from a commercial standpoint, if you want to get someone into this series, and I can't remember whether they said like, oh, you don't have to play the first one. If they did say that, it's not true. You are going to get so much more enjoyment out of playing the first one. And I think that's probably a huge barrier to a lot of people that's like, you have this remastered version, but now you're asking me to play 2 games. So I think that's probably a hindrance to its sales as well. And like I said, I love the fact that it's direct sequel, but I'm sure that for a lot of people, that's a barrier to checking it out. So yeah, sad for Alan Wake fans, as I would love to see a third one after Alan Wake 2. And like you said, Colin, maybe a TV show can help things out, but I'm not hopeful as an Alan Wake fan, despite that.
Yeah, I feel bad about bringing this up every quarter when they say we haven't made our money back yet or whatever, but it's important because, well, first of all, I think we're all big Remedy fans, but it's just a sign of the times. And it's a sign of the disconnect. And like you said, yeah, it's a very isolated game in terms of Alan Wake being so old. They obviously intentionally re-released it to try to get people on board the year before, which was cool. And that's when I played it. And dude, the original Alan Wake is so great. It's so good. I was so surprised by how good it was based on how people talked about it. Being like, yeah, it's a cool idea, but it's not fun to really play and stuff. And I'm like, it's just fucking mega fun to play. What are you talking about? I love Alan Wake. That game was so cool. And I'm really looking forward to getting into Alan Wake 2. And speaking of Alan Wake 2, it's one of the games that has a PS5 Pro enhancement. I put a link here in our document just to a PlayStation blog post people can check out if they want, called PS5 Pro 50 plus enhanced games available at launch November 7th. We are recording this podcast on November 7th. Now, Dustin, you are waiting for the 30th anniversary. Now, people had said that was always dated that day.
Yeah, I think it was.
I believe that, but it's important to note that nonetheless, I still got an email from Walmart saying that it was delayed from the date from today until for the controller from today until whatever date it was. So there's something up with that too, but I can't speak to the console itself. So you have to wait a little bit a while longer. Chris, remind me, did you ordered one?
Yeah,
did you get it?
I've been nervously checking my phone because I'm it's supposed to come today, possibly during this recording, like is the window. And I'm still like, I just hope they deliver it into the right building this time. Well, I think my eyes been like side-eyeing my phone, but yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's going to be one of those things you have to sign for. Yeah. So like, I don't know if you have a concierge or whatever in your building, but, or if they'll just call you or whatever, but they came this morning and I didn't hear the door because we sleep with the doors shut and like we have a fan in our room. Like I have like a fucking Blizzard fan next to my face, so I just don't hear shit. The dogs didn't hear it because they didn't bark. So we had the UPS thing and it's like you have to come to the CVS or whatever to pick it up. So I was like, fuck. But I'm not going to use it tonight anyway. I don't think because there's a really good football game on tonight that I want to watch. But Micah said she might go out and get it for me in a little while, which is cool. But mine is in the area.
It's
close.
It's chilling.
It's close.
If I randomly dart out of the room for any reason, that's why.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't want to deal with this hunt. You know,
I'm excited to get it and get out of the box and see what happens. See if I can notice any difference on these games. I don't have that autistic eye for all of this stuff that a lot of people do, but I do notice my frame rates. And obviously, I just think it's going to be obvious that the things are going to have higher resolutions and stuff. I should have used it because we got a letter from the audience asking something like, I can't tell the difference between 30 and 60 frames. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I fix that? And I'm like, dude, I was right there with you. I was right there with you because in the PS3 era, for instance, and PS4 era, we were bouncing back and forth between all of these different things. And a lot of things just ran at 30 frames a second. So it's what becomes normal. When 60 frames became normal for me, as I've said many times, which is only in the PS4 generation, when I really started playing 60 frames, 60 frames, 60 frames, 60 frames, 30 frames, then you notice.
Yeah.
So you have to continue to just complete. It is impossible not to notice, in my opinion. And that's all I needed. I should have just done that a long time ago. You know, like Clockwork Orange, like the guy with the fucking holding the eyeballs. I should have just had someone do that and just like play 100 different games at different frame rates with the numbers underneath them. Then I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, now I get it. Now I get it. Even the feel of 60 frames versus 30 frames. It's impossible to not know once you've been exposed to it. So my suggestion to that guy would have been just keep exposing yourself to 60 frames and then go back and try to play a 30 frame game, and you'll want to fucking blow your head off. And that's what happened with Silent Hill 2. When I started playing it a little bit, Silent Hill 2 Remake, I was like, ugh. When I started playing it, you just noticed it immediately. It's like, oh my God, look at this fucking frame rate.
It's always heartbreaking.
Yeah. And the fucking motion blur and all that stuff. It's like, oh my God. Go fuck yourself. All right.
So hostile.
It was totally unnecessary to be that hostile.
That's okay.
Gamatsu, our friends over there, Sal Romano, writes 2 pieces having to do with Bandai Namco trademarks. He was trolling the trademark registry over in Japan and found 2 interesting ones. Let's make up what they are in our heads. Dustin, let's go to you first. Bandai Namco trademarks Night Rain in Japan, NIGHT-REIGN. What is it?
This is an anime Dark Souls game from the team that made that last one that wasn't very good.
Anime Dark Souls.
Yeah, what was that called? That
Steel Rising?
Anime Dark Souls. I remember because I played it at the first E3 that I went to. But I don't remember what it's called. Oh, Code Vein.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my off the cuff prediction.
All right. Chris?
It's not really based on anything.
And Chris, Bandai Namco trademarks Battle Destiny. This is suggested to be probably a Mobile Suit Gundam game, but let's pretend it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is Battle Destiny?
Battle Destiny. Battle Destiny sounds to me like it sounds anime for some reason. Like I know it's not probably, but it's
Bandai Namco.
Yeah, it's a good chance it is if it's Bandai Namco.
There's a good chance. That's kind of my assumption. It's like Battle Destiny. I would imagine. I don't know. I'm imagining like a Code Lyoko kind of fucking thing where it's like we got a fucking almost like Battle Network. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, oh, you're going into fucking the computer to find your destiny in battle.
Or like what are some other games? Actually, Dot Hack was like that, and then actually Sword Art is like that too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sword Fart.
Sword Fart Online.
Nice.
That's good.
It's amazing. Yeah. That's like Galo back in the day. It's like
Galo.
amazing.
Galo.
Good shit.
I definitely said Galo here and there.
Of course.
You know?
I think everybody did.
Want to play some Galo? Probably said way worse than that after, you know?
Absolutely.
You want to play some Galo, you?
You.
I won't say anymore. Jesus, I'm coughing like I'm fucking dying of tuberculosis. It's crazy. All right. Final piece of news. By the way, I've been sneezing constantly. I think I'm dying. Well, I am philosophically, and I am academically dying, but
yeah,
something's
it's probably it's allergies, right?
Micah. I've said it before. Micah makes fun of me because she's like, I'm like, I don't ever really feel good, like my entire life. She's like, yeah, there's probably things that are wrong with you. Like maybe you have allergies. You're always blowing your nose. You're sneezing. I'm like, nah, I've just been riding like this for 40 years. At this point,
riding and suffering.
Yeah. Well, because I guess everyone has a different baseline, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, normal is not necessarily good, but it's normal. So you just kind of roll with it,
Right. It's your baseline, and so you're accustomed to it. I think about that a lot in the terms of like, those movies or those TV shows where like there's like a Freaky Friday type situation where people like switch bodies or whatever, and they're like, I'm you, you're me. Like, I feel like they really skirt past, I feel like they skip past the interesting thing there, which is like, these people would not be acclimated to the little quirks and little pains of each other's body. Like, I feel like they would both be in excruciating pain because they're not accustomed to their own. And that's never taken into account at all.
That's so interesting, dude. Like, imagine. Okay, so imagine a Freaky Friday situation and you end up in someone's body and you're like, dude, does your leg always feel like this?
Exactly.
That's and then he's in there and he goes into your body and he's like, are you always this sad?
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Like, it's fascinating. That's like a Black Mirror thing. Like a doctor that loops in and diagnoses people by going into there
Right.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. The closest thing that I ever saw was that Black Mirror episode where the guy gets like addicted to dying.
Right. That's a good one.
Where it's like, which is like really cool. That was like a really interesting thing. But like, you never. I don't know, I feel like that's such an obvious. That would be the first thing that I would be thinking if I was writing a story like that. And it's just never. I guess it's hard to make super interesting, but like I'd be thinking about it almost exclusively the entire time. Like, do you always have headaches like this?
Right.
Like,
right.
you know?
Yeah. Are you always this depressed? The answer is yes. You know, even finding pharmaceuticals like in my 30s in terms of actually going to a psychiatrist for the first time instead of just a psychologist and starting to take that stuff, I'm like, oh, you don't have to feel like this?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Huh. You don't have to be so anxious that you can cut it with a knife. Yeah. Are you serious? It's interesting, you know?
You're serious?
Very, very interesting. Yeah. I think everyone's dealing with something like that. Like some peculiarity that they don't even realize because it is so normalized. Mm-hmm. What is more normalized than being yourself? You are you perceiving everything through your lens. So of course you're never going to notice fucking all sorts of stupid shit.
Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. We're getting very deep today, which I respect and I appreciate that a lot. Where are we here? Oh, we're talking about Battle Destiny. Okay. Finally, this broke this morning. Death Stranding is now on Xbox. Very, very interesting indeed. Ultra Giant wrote in and said, hey, CDC, today Kojima and 505 Games blindsided everyone and shadow dropped Death Stranding onto Xbox. A subsequent press release announced that Kojima Productions has gained the full rights to Death Stranding. Do you think this now raises the likelihood of Death Stranding 2 going to Xbox at launch, or do you think Sony will have retained some sort of timed exclusivity? Excuse my ignorance, but would Sony have had to sign off on the games going to Xbox, given it's built on the Decima engine? Can we read into anything about Sony's willingness to let games go over to Xbox in the future, or is it likely a one-off with Kojima? Thanks for the great content as usual from the UK. Oi! So that's how you guys talk over there, right? So this news was making the rounds, and I was pretty surprised by this. There's a lot to say about this. First of all, from just a player's perspective, kind of amped about it because I fucking love Death Stranding. And anyone who has not played it, if they're on Xbox, you should definitely play it. And as far as I understand, it's only $20. That is a fucking steal. Oh,
yeah. That's crazy.
So definitely go play Death Stranding on Xbox if you haven't played it already. But from a business perspective and a publishing perspective, I think there's an interesting hint that I only saw one outlet notice. What is today's date in Japan right now, Dustin?
It would be the 8th, right?
Correct. What day did Death Stranding come out 5 years ago?
Was it November 8th?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
There's no way that's a coincidence. There is no way that the game launches on Xbox 5 years to the date of when it came out to PS5. That to me indicates that there was some sort of deal for this to always be the case. Or at least to liberate the game in some way. Here's how I read it. And this is why I put the Japanese link here to Automaton, which is a Japanese website. Because this is the source of the information I could not find for like a half an hour. All the stories I was reading were like, oh, and Kojima said that they own the IP now. And I was like, what? And so I went to US Trademark Office search, and Sony still owns it. But that shit takes months and sometimes way longer to update. So that's not going to be a great sign of what's going on there. But I went to this Japanese art. It was annoying as fuck, by the way. No one was citing their sources. I hate that shit. It's like they were all just regurgitating, but I'm like, who said this? So I finally found it on a Japanese website where they talked directly to these guys at Automaton. And they confirmed that they own the IP now. So my theory on this is like, I'm not saying this was always going to happen, but it might have been an option written into the verbiage in the original contracts that if X feels this way, Y feels this way, Z wants this thing, then this will happen 5 years from the launch of the game, because it's just too weird for it to come out. It's not only the anniversary of the release date on PS5, it's the 5th anniversary. It's a milestone anniversary. So I feel like this was maybe in the cards. That Sony relinquishes the IP at a certain point, and so on and so forth. But that's just the theory of the case. It could also be that Sony doesn't really give a shit about Death Stranding. It's not an IP that they feel like has, Chris is going to get his box. So anyway, well, I'll stop there. There's much more to say. How does this strike you when you saw this? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think Kojima, when it came to him first coming back, starting his new studio, he probably knew that he would need to make some concessions, but him being the, I guess the artist that he thinks he is, and is, I would say, wants his stuff to be everywhere. So I think this is a deal that he was willing to make in order to get the game in his studio off the ground. The big question more for me is like what this means for Death Stranding 2. With Sony still marketing Death Stranding 2 and kind of putting it, in their showcases and stuff like that, I would imagine Death Stranding 2 will still have an exclusivity window. I'm not sure if it'll be 5 years, but probably a year, you'd have to imagine at the least, especially if they're paying for it to some degree. Oh, there he is. He's got the box. Very nice.
Cool, man.
So yeah, I'm guessing that Sony now has all eyes towards Fizzin, right? That's what it's called. His next project. So maybe there's a similar deal for that as well.
Yeah, the effect of Death Stranding 2 is interesting. Because I think I thought PlayStation Productions was doing a Death Stranding. Weren't they doing a TV show or a movie, or at least investigating it? Or was that Kojima doing it on his own? Obviously, also, it includes 505 Games as the publisher on PC, and 505 is acting as the publisher on Xbox as well. As far as I understand, the PlayStation splash screen is on the Xbox version in the beginning. So, that's interesting too. Did you find something about the TV or movie situation?
Yeah, I know that there is a movie. I was trying to see if Sony had anything to do with it, but nothing's coming up immediately. I think it's A24. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A24 is their partner for the movie.
That's cool. That's great. Chris, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, well, dope. First off, sorry, I had to go.
That's great. Package. So you got, for people that are listening to the audio, he got his PS5 Pro sitting on in the box on behind him.
Yeah, I got it. Excited. Finally, I don't have to break into another building to get it, which is nice. Huge relief off my shoulders. But no, I think this is first of all, I don't think that release date is a coincidence. But I'm stoked. I think it's cool. I think Death Stranding is such a weirdly unique game that I remember specifically not expecting to like as much as I did. And the more people who get to play it, the better. So yeah, this is a dope move. I don't really know. I was kind of gone for a little bit of that conversation. So like, I'm not sure if you touched on like whether or not that means 2 is going, but
Dustin was just talking about that, and he was hypothesizing that it's probably a timed exclusive and they're just not going to talk about that yet. Sony is funding these games though. So there is weirdness about this just from Sony's perspective, and it's what makes me think that this was always in motion, because I don't see why Sony would relinquish the IP simply because you have, Hiroki Totoki Literature Club talking about how they have a dearth of IP, that they need to continue to invest in IP. I mean, this was a major part of Concord and why they spent so much money on it, was that they wanted to spool up new things for them to take advantage of in the multimedia space. It's not just about games. So it's surprising to me that they let go of the IP from that perspective. But if they're working with A24, for instance, and other outside producers on a movie, there's really no more value for them to extract from it. And frankly, and bringing it, just for Chris's edification, Dustin brought up Fizzin, which is the thing they're doing with PlayStation and with Sony Pictures. That might just be consuming them at this point. And you got to kind of play nice, right? Especially with auteurs like Kojima. If he comes to you and says, like, we want Death Stranding, you're not doing anything with it. We're doing the movie separately. We have the game. You're going to have the second game. You're going to have it. And I'm always going to be associated with you, but we want it. It's like, yeah, you're not going to be a dickhead to him. He's got extreme leverage, probably unlike almost anyone. And you can see that from how quickly Sony got into bed with him with Death Stranding. And that could also, if you go all the way back to 2015, when Death Stranding was kind of signed with Sony in its very embryonic state, post Metal Gear Solid 5, they made that deal like that. Wasn't there that picture with Shuhei in the elevator with him? With how Shuhei takes those pictures of and maybe a lot of that stuff was already just baked into the pie from the very beginning. You know, I just refuse to believe that the 5-year anniversary thing is a fucking coincidence. To me, that strikes me as being like, we're literally releasing this the first second that we can. And it's also clear, just based on the OD project, that Kojima is friendly with Microsoft, and that's going to be great for him. He should, dude, if I was him, I'd be playing all sides against the middle like you wouldn't even believe. So maybe I wouldn't. Maybe one of these guys would have been like, we'll give you $500 million if you just come make games for us. I'd be like, all right, fine. I mean, but he's different, you know?
All right.
Yeah, it's like, fine. That's fine.
Just life-changing infinite security and a life beyond your wildest dreams. All right.
Well, I mean it more from the perspective of like, I'm going to be fiercely independent. We're going to make all these things. We're going to work with everyone. And they're like, how about $500 million? Be like, oh, all right. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just like the image of you in that position and you reacting that way is great.
I respect the shit out of people like Kojima because, and I respect a lot of people for this reason, is that you are so far beyond being able to sell out that, dude, I would have sold out years ago if I were him. So I respect. It's the same thing with Miyamoto. I bring it up pretty often, but it's like the fact that he only makes like $2 million a year or something is fucking hysterical. That is so funny to me. It's like, dude, you could be making enormous amounts of money. You don't give a shit. You're like exactly where you want to be. You're rich. You're famous. And that's enough. And I think that would be enough for me too, frankly. But it's so funny how these guys that have been baited Miyamoto has probably been baited with money since the 80s. Can you imagine the things that have been offered to him probably?
Oh, yeah.
You don't think Sony or like Microsoft or any of these guys ever came and tried to poach him?
Yeah.
That never happened? It's like, I'm sure it did. And I'm sure he had to turn down lots and lots of money. And it's just cool that there's a balance where enough's enough. These guys are rich. Kojima's been rich for years, many years, decades. And that's great. He's earned it many times over, but it's cool that he's like, I really just want to, I'm comfortable and I want to just create things. And I just respect the shit out of that. It's kind of like, it blows up in your face sometimes. I think Insomniac kind of blew up in Insomniac's face in terms of getting bought at the low, basically.
You live and learn, I guess.
You really do. And it's hard to be mad if you're a Ted Price or whatever, where it's like, I made, $100 million or whatever on my portion of the company. But it's like, if you held on, you might have made like 500 million. Yeah. And if you sold earlier, you might have made 500 million. So it's like, but you got your money eventually. I think I don't know much about that inside baseball stuff with that post acquisition, but my suspicion is that he was tired of dealing with all of this bullshit. Yeah. Having to get the next project, having to go chase the next check, get the next partner, pitch the next game. I'm sure it's really exhausting, and it wasn't working for them. You think about Fuse, Song of the Deep, which was a good game, but no one gave a fuck about their stuff with Oculus, Sunset Overdrive, just dead ends.
It was a rough patch for sure. I like imagining Miyamoto in the early 2000s with the Xbox, kind of like, hey, listen, we're gonna give you everything you ever want. And he just goes like, "Are you the Voodoo Vince guys?"
What do you guys think? Something that Ultra Giant wrote in here about is that this is really intriguing to me is about Decima running on an Xbox.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Surely this means that Sony, even if they have Kojima has regained the IP and he owns it, surely they're still getting a rip from the license of that
I would imagine
engine
so.
On every Xbox sale.
It's just clear that this was a very bespoke, weird deal in the sense that 505 published the game on PC. This was kind of in that weird interstitial period where Sony probably wasn't even interested in publishing PC games. And then during the game's development, they were like, oh shit. Like we actually don't even, and it could also be that they didn't want to look bad to their audiences. They're like, we need to find a proxy basically to publish this game on PC, but it's part of the deal. There's all sorts of things that I don't know, like the butterfly effect of how we got to this point, but I am confident that this was baked in and that this didn't just fall out of the sky because the timing is just too weird. And Sony just has to play nice with Kojima. I mean, and you imagine that Kojima was probably getting, think about, it was clear it was over with Konami and Kojima before Metal Gear came out, as you guys remember, in 2015. But once it did, it was done. And you imagine that October, November, Activision, Take-Two, maybe Nintendo. I mean, a lot of people were probably up that dude's far up his ass. And so Sony would probably made the deal that was like, yeah, all right, you have the rights after this. You did that, but let's just get you and like win. We win. And we'll worry about all that later. That's kind of my theory of the case with this. But it gets into something interesting Zach Yearwood wrote in about. And this is something we do need to grapple with. He says, hey, CDC, following the shadow drop of Death Stranding and the release of Predator Hunting Grounds on Xbox, there seems to be a trend of Sony starting to loosen their grip on their second-party deals to let these developers publish either independently or with other publishers. Do you guys think it's bad business for Sony to let these deals spin off and take the publishing elsewhere rather than publishing these games themselves on other platforms so they can get a cut of each sale? This could be a great way to help bolster their margins more, but seems like a missed opportunity. Thank you guys and have a great weekend. I am of the mind... Let me back up. Sony lost a number of really important deals as we've gone into in the past by being really strict with the IP. They lost out on a bunch of games that are totally associated with other platforms now that were pitched to them first. And we always bring up Limbo as a major game. And what scared everyone off in that generation was, and this was in the PS2 and PS3 generation, was if Sony touches your game, they own it. That was it. Like they wouldn't even deal with you at all. If you didn't like that, it's like too bad. Then go bring it to fucking Microsoft. And that was kind of how they felt at the time until that started kind of blowing up in their face. And that's how things like Summer of Arcade and all that stuff were really growing on XBLA and became a huge thing. It was because Sony was just didn't want to have anything to do with these games if they couldn't own them. In the late PS3 and early PS4 era, everything changed. And people might remember the PS3 and PS4 slogan of like PlayStation loves indies. This was at the time when they were courting indies with Pub Fund and basically helping fund and fill in the financial gaps for different games in exchange for temporary exclusivity. And so Axiom Verge was one of these games. Mercenary Kings was one of these games. And there was a bunch of them from that era. Some of them were irrelevant. Some of them were highly relevant. But the important thing was that they realized that they needed just timed exclusivity for these smaller games. That the exclusive stuff would come from within their family and real second-party A and AAA games, but certainly not the indie space. And I think looking at the picture from 30,000 feet, it's like, it seems like that mantra has only expanded over time. So now we see Stellar Blade, which Sony helped fund, but it's clear that Sony didn't put as much money into that game as people think. We saw that from the financial, we saw that from Shift Up's own financials where they're like, yeah, we paid Sony like $7 million last quarter in revenue from licensing and royalties. And we saw with Rise of the Ronin that Tecmo Koei actually owns that game. That was unheard of. And that began really with Neo. And that started flexing in that way too. But back in the day, second-party relationships like that never worked in the A and AAA space. Sony owns Heavenly Sword. Sony owns Folklore. Sony owns Lair. Sony owns all of this shit because they wouldn't make these games without that. So you can already see that that's being flexed out. And Death Stranding might have been kind of the tip of the spear and we never really realized it. So I think flexibility is key here. Let's remember a really important thing about the Concord story that I think has gone underappreciated is that Sony didn't own the IP until they bought the studio. They were never intending on being the main, they were the publishing partner of the game. They were not the full funder and publisher of the game. And that says to me that they were even willing to work in a major way with these bigger games with bigger budgets that were probably going to come to other consoles at some point, that were timed in some sense, but were not even published by PlayStation. That only changed when they acquired the studio and doubled down on the game. So I think you're going to continue to see flexibility like this. Predator Hunting Grounds is not the only example of this. Just Sony letting go of some of its IP. We talked about Fantavision and just weird shit. They've really the Tomorrow Children with Q Games. They've just been more flexible than ever. I would imagine that flexibility will continue to court things in the short to midterm and not even worry about the long term. Because by the time the long term comes, it's hard. Like even the biggest console fanboys can't be that horrified about Death Stranding going to Xbox. It's like, dude, the game came out 5 years ago. Who gives a shit? It's 5 years old. The sequel is coming out in less than a year. It's like, even if you really are militant. And I think Sony probably realizes that too. It's like, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be here too. It's always been here. If you cared about it, you would have played it in the last 5 years. So yeah, I think this is a sign of more things like this to come, specifically from the second party, I would obviously say. The first party, like there was that rumor that Helldivers 2 was going to go to, and Helldivers 2 is a second party game too, but there there are these rumors that all of these different games are going to go to Xbox. And I'm like, no, I don't think that those things are true. I don't think Helldivers was ever going to Xbox. I don't think that conversation ever happened. It doesn't make any sense because they don't have to play nice with Arrowhead, but they do have to play nice with Kojima. So we'll see what happens with all these different games. But interesting piece of late breaking news for us to discuss here. And I hope the Xbox audience loves Death Stranding because it's, and if you don't, you have no fucking taste. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, let's get into what we're playing. Chris, let's start with you, and then Dustin and I can talk about Metaphor together.
Yeah. So I've been pretty knee deep into Black Ops 6. I don't. If people have listened to the show for a while, they know that I'm not really a Call of Duty person. Call of Duty doesn't really do it for me generally. I tend to skip most of them, and the few that I do give a chance, I'm usually on for like maybe 2 hours, 3 hours max. I try like maybe the first level of the campaign, and I'm like, I'm not feeling it. That's kind of how I felt with Call of Duty. Cold War? It's kind of how I felt about the recent Modern Warfares that came out, where there's like, it's fine. I don't know. I'm not really feeling them. I haven't really played Call of Duty seriously or in a way that's, has allowed that series to grab me since probably Modern Warfare 2, the original Modern Warfare 2 in 2009. Didn't really play much of the original Black Ops either. I know those are like pretty beloved games, like Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. Not really part of my history as far as games that I really, really loved, right? I think that's important context because as somebody who is somewhat of a hater, if you will, I feel like it means a lot when I say that this is fucking sick. Black Ops 6 is awesome. Like it is so good, it's unbelievable. Like it's like it feels like there's finally a Call of Duty game that matches what I keep hearing people say about it, where I just haven't seen that before. The multiplayer is really great. Like I've played so much of it, and it doesn't feel sweaty. I don't know how else to describe it. Like I feel like I'm being put in matches that are just casually like entertaining and fun. There's like one person every now and again that'll like go prone in the middle of a gunfight, and I'm like, come on, what do you? We're all having fun here. Let's relax a little bit with the fucking advanced tactics.
Yeah.
But outside of like the occasional like one person on each team, like I felt like, wow, this feels like how I remember competitive FPSs playing when I was a kid. And I have absolutely gotten worse at these games. Like there's no question about it. Like I feel like that must be true. So the fact that I'm still having a fun time and I'm like getting into close games all the time, and like some games are blowouts, some games aren't, but like I'm not like sweating, people aren't doing crazy like backflips and shit. It's great. It's really great. Zombies is really fun, although I'll admit a bit of a shock to my system because I haven't played Zombies since World at War. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? There's like, I played with a couple of friends and they were like, oh, did you get this gobble gum? And I'm like, I have no fucking clue what you're saying. But it's really fun. There's like a Borderlands kind of element to it in some weird way. There's like health bars over the zombies, which I've heard some people say they don't like, but it makes the game feel different from previous Call of Duties enough to me that I'm actually like really engaged with it. It feels like its own kind of unique experience. Reminds me a lot of like old school, like kind of like Left 4 Dead, kind of progressing through like an environment, just kind of hunkering down and holding out and just trying to beat the clock and beat the score. It's really fun. It's really cool. The campaign though is, so I don't know how deep like the level structure is kind of weird. The level structure almost reminds me a little bit of like Alan Wake, where you're like there's like an evidence board and you're kind of like, you're choosing things through that way. And that's kind of how it keeps track of the missions. And there's like a hub area where you're kind of like looking for clues. It's like not an open world necessarily, but it's like an open kind of zone kind of hub thing where with like all these like kind of extra secrets in it that you can explore before you go into like your next mission. And there's like a base building thing, and you can find money throughout the missions to like build up your gear and build up your stats and build up your base. But some of these missions I am absolutely flabbergasted are in a Call of Duty game. Like there's a couple already that are full on stealth missions that like dive really, really deep into stealth. It's not Hitman level or like Splinter Cell level, but it's way deeper stealth than I anticipated being in a Call of Duty game. Like Call of Duty is always it's Fast and Furious. And undoubtedly there are certain points in these stealth missions that, by the way, are pretty long, that by the end of it, you know, it starts out like you're Hitman and you're sneaking and you're sulking and you're pickpocketing, which is crazy. But then at the end of it, you're like on a motorcycle, you know, on a highway flipping 15 times. And it's great. It's good shit from a level design perspective in the campaign. Really experimental. Didn't really expect any of this out of a Call of Duty campaign. Out of a Call of Duty game, really, either. The only thing I guess I would say is that the maps are a little kind of like, they're kind of okay. Like they're not really, there's no like amazing maps really in my estimation. It's like, they're all like serviceable, and there's like one that I don't really like that much, but like, there's none that I hate or none that I love. That's probably like
Which one don't you like?
There's
I'm curious.
Oh my god, I don't remember the name of it. It's like
just describe it, because I know all of them.
It's so I mainly play TDM. It's the one where it's really gray. It's almost like a missile silo or something, and there's like it's
the big satellite dish.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Everyone hangs out on the satellite dish and snipes.
Yeah,
which can be fun to just sit and pick them off because they always go to that spot. But I know. Is that
the flow of it is kind of awkward, but everything else I think is fine. There's one that's like kind of feels like Rust, where it's like so small and chaotic that like it just feels like nothing. It feels like there's no real way to strategize, so it's just like fuck it, we ball kind of energy, which I like it. But like, dude, like no, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is fucking great. Genuinely surprised. I had a feeling too, like when we first saw like some of the stuff that they were showing about it with like the omnidirectional movement and how much that would add. And it's weird because it doesn't affect the game as much as I thought it would, but also it does add a lot, and it does make the game feel significantly different. Being able to slide left and right and backwards and dive backwards it's just really cool. And it makes the game feel a lot more dynamic and more interesting. It feels like more interesting things can happen. It feels like people can be more unpredictable, which helps when you're playing a game for like the 10th, 20th, 50th, 100th time in a row that there's enough there that feels predictable enough that you understand how the game works, but there's enough there to keep it dynamic and keep things feeling fresh on the 100th, 200th, 500th round of something. So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. I'm not done with the campaign quite yet, and I'm not even really sure how deep into it percentage wise I am. I just got to a level. I don't know if it's spoilerish, but I got into a level with I just finished a stealth level that had to do with a political figure that I'm just baffled is in a Call of Duty game. I'll put it that way. Like it's weird seeing this person.
I know what you're talking about. It is probably a spoiler. I heard about it. Yeah. Though. It is interesting. It sounds really cool. Yeah, it's
dope, man. I think you'd love it. Like if you, because you already like Call of Duty campaigns as is, and this is fucking, it's next level good. Like who did this one? This one's Is this Raven or no?
Yeah, I think Raven did the campaign.
I'm not super caught up on like the.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Raven did the campaign. I'm looking. It's Black Ops 6, right?
It's Black Ops 6. It's primarily a Treyarch game, but I don't know about campaign specifically.
That's what I'm curious about. It says here
that the developer, is Treyarch, and then on Wikipedia it says Treyarch and then Raven Software underneath.
Interesting. I wonder if maybe they split. I don't know who's responsible for what, but they killed it. It's really good. I'm not done with it yet. I guess there's a possibility that it could disappoint me. I also understand that. I'm playing Black Ops 6. I haven't played any of the previous Black Ops games. I don't really know what the fuck is going on. Cold War, as far as I understand, is the direct prequel to this. Like a lot of stuff that happens in Cold War, I think, leads into this. So I'm missing a lot of context. But even with that missing context, I'm still following like the broader plot of it just fine. And it is just very fucking fun and entertaining and well done. I don't know how many people are going to jive with the stealth missions. It's like such an interesting thing to do in a game like this, but I appreciate it as a fan of that genre that has been starved for a very, very long time. To play great stealth in, of all things, Call of Duty is really cool. And now, like, don't get it twisted. It's not like, again, I want to reiterate, it's not Hitman, it's not Splinter Cell, it's not Dishonored, it's not crazy. We're not like into immersive sim territory, but like for a Call of Duty game, absolutely astonished. And so yeah, highly recommend it. It's good shit. They have a great game on their hands, and I was not expecting to feel any of that about a Call of Duty game probably ever. So congrats to the team. Good shit.
I've confirmed Raven Software did the production of the single player campaign. Treyarch did multiplayer and zombies, which is probably why the game feels, I mean, just from the outside, it feels like such a robust, sounds like such a robust game. And that's how you do it when you have fucking thousands of people making your game at the same time over a few year period. Are all of the, so as you were talking, I was thinking, I've been very ambitious in my mind for like 10 years now that I stopped playing Call of Duty, where it was always in my mind where I'm like, yeah, I played all the Call of Duty games up to whatever. And then I just kept saying that in my mind. And I'm like, I'm totally lapsed and like have not played Call of Duty in so long. Are all of the Black Ops games available on PS4 at least? No, because I was wondering if it's like, it would be cool to just be able to single out one of the lines and just at least try to bang out one of the subplot lines in the Call of Duty franchise. But yeah, you can't play all of them on there, so I don't even know how I would do that. I have Black Ops 1 on PS3, but it's probably at Dagan's.
Yeah. I don't know. As far as I know, like it does tie into the old ones, but I do think like it's more of an immediate, like the only thing that you would really need to play is Cold War probably to really get the most out of it. Because I think I remember certain characters from like the brief like mission of Cold War, and apparently Cold War is pretty good too. I don't know. I just wasn't. I think I played that on PS5 and there was no FOV slider in the campaign, and I was like, no. So that game's probably great. Also, I just I'm playing. It should be noted that I'm playing Black Ops 6 on PC because it's on Game Pass or whatever, and I was like, oh, yeah, why not? That seems pretty good for like $11. And so I'm playing it on PC. There's a lot more features there. I don't necessarily know if there is an FOV slider in campaign on PS5. Maybe not. If that's like a deal breaker for you, like it was kind of for me, honestly. Might not be the best, but like on PC, it's an easy recommend. And I'm sure the multiplayer does have FOV. So like if you're in it just for multiplayer zombies, I think you should have a pretty good time with that still. But yeah, dude, that campaign is great. So like shout out to Raven. Not done with it yet. I guess it has the potential to disappoint me still, but amazing shit so far. Raven
in the great state of Wisconsin. Such a weird place. Actually, it's not when you consider the history of where Raven comes from. But it is. I'm always fascinated by that. It's like Bend being in Oregon. It's like, yeah, it's kind of strange. All right, so that's Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We will try to do something on Sacred Symbols Plus, much deeper about it in the weeks to come. So keep an eye out for that. Dustin, meanwhile, you and I are playing Metaphor Refantasio from Studio Zero and Atlas. Where are you? What are your thoughts? What do you have to say about it? Any updates?
Yeah. So to be honest, this past week, my parents are still here, still getting their house ready. And with them here, it's not that I can't play. It's just normally when I would play for, I don't know, 3-4 hours straight, it's a lot more broken up. So I feel like I'm not making as much progress as I would like. I did finish the first dungeon, and I am now on to just starting like the next chunk, because there's the days in between where you can help out at the inn or go sit on a bench is one of the gameplay mechanics in this to increase some stats. So I'm having a good time with it. I am just continually impressed by, of course, the art, the UI in it. And I am excited to see more, of course. Colin, I do want to lead right into you talking about it, but I want to issue a PSA to the audience as well regarding a game I talked about 2 weeks ago, TCG Card Shop Simulator. I don't have anything else to say on it, but I did notice, I was browsing the PSN store, as I do, and there's a game for pre-order called Trading Card Shop Simulator. And I was like, oh, cool. This game, I can tell people it's coming to PSN. Then I clicked on it. It's got a weird AI generated image of a girl standing there with some cards. Like, this doesn't look right. It's not the same game. They use the same font and the same style logo as the Steam game. But the Steam game is called TCG Card Shop Simulator, and this is called Trading Card Shop Simulator. So I posted that on Twitter, and I had actually quite a few people say, "Oh, I was going to buy this based on you talking about it, but now I find out it is not the same game."
It's deceptive. This is up to Sony to stop this shit, man.
Yeah.
They don't care.
So
like any publisher, I know the exact AI art you're talking about because so many games have them now. And it's like any game that comes through Sony's desk that's like got that art, it's like garbage. Nope.
Yeah.
Into the garbage you go.
So shout out the team behind the original game is OP Neon Games, still only available on Steam. But yeah, it sucks for them. This game is picking up, no pun intended, Steam on PC. And has overwhelmingly positive reviews. And now this game, and someone even alerted me in the replies, there are 4 games that are trading card shop simulator derivatives on PSN. And none of them are the one that's big. 2 of them yet to come out. Actually, 3 of them are yet to come out on PSN. So Sony, sort this shit out. Because if someone goes and buys this game, or one of these 4 copycats, and they're like, "Oh, this sucks," and they get burnt, that makes you look bad. And it also makes this developer that made an awesome game look bad if someone doesn't connect the dots. So shame on Sony for this. Fix it, because it sucks. There are legitimate people in my replies that were going to buy this trash without realizing. So fix it. So that's it.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. It's not good for anyone. It's not going to be good for anyone. All right. So what is the date you're in or on in a metaphor? Do you know?
I have no idea. I just that information goes in and out as fast as possible.
What is your hour count?
Somewhere between 10 and 15.
Okay. Yeah, I'm at like 25 hours now, and I'm in mid-July, I want to say. So this is a weird thing. This is like Colin complaining about everyone not speaking Russian in Metal Gear Solid 3. All right. Some of you are going to roll your eyes at this one. The days of the week are fictional, but the months are real.
I noticed that.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
So they have like, there's no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's like Flames Day, Steel's Day, or whatever the fuck the names are.
Metals Day.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. And then and they show it as like 7/6, 7/7. And I'm like, all right, that's kind of cool. They must be, they're going to play it like they're fictional months, but they probably will never name them or whatever. But then you go to get side quests. It's like, I need this done by July. I'm like, July? And then it was just struck me as weird because I'm like, you're going through all of this to like make a fictional calendar in this fictional world, but then you have July? It was just weird. Listen, after the French Revolution, the French redid their entire calendar and made everything up. If they can do it, these developers could have done it too. You know?
Yeah.
There was no July after the French Revolution for a while. So I just thought that is a weird niche Colin complaint, but it stood out to me. It's like, why just go halfway? I don't know. There's got to be someone else that noticed that.
July.
Yeah, it's like, I need that on Flames Day in July. Like, okay. We call that Wednesday, but that's fine that you want it that day. That's okay. All right. I'm really enjoying it. And I don't know how far into the game I am. You can see the trophy rarities, and the story trophy I just got had like 60%. It's crazy how many people are playing this game so deeply. It's like, how does everyone have time to play this? I understand how I have time to play it, but I really don't understand how people have time to play games like this. It's fun. It's emotional. It's real. It's political. People are saying that it's a left-wing game in some sense, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's somewhat. I think there are games that we were talking about Death Stranding. In my opinion, Death Stranding is overtly right-wing. When we talked about that when that game came out, it's like that game reads so deeply pro-life that it's almost crazy, in my opinion, that it was like from a mainstream publisher. And I remember Chris and I would talk about that and our agreements and disagreements about that 5 years ago. So I've always read it. I've always read it like that. This game strikes me as philosophical in the same way that Pentiment is. Mm-hmm. Pentiment is about something different, though. This is about much more interpersonal depth. But it's not an ideological game. obviously the references to Utopia and more and all that. I mean, some of them can hit you on the head about what it is. But it's about idealism, in my opinion. I mean, that's what the game seems to be about. And certainly utopianism, but they talk about that pretty overtly. And as I said last week, I can't get away from this feeling that it feels like the Hunger Games, like something that would happen in that world. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to, we have this competition, everyone watches, and two people from each place go and they have to fight to the death, and it's fucking weird, but everyone's in on it. In this, it's the same. It feels the same thing. It's like we're having a competition to be king, and everyone's in on it. And it feels fresh and interesting. And yet deep, as someone who has only played Persona 4 out of all of those products, it feels deeply familiar. It's like it is Persona. It's just Persona in so many different ways. You're reading a fucking book. You're gaining your courage. You're spending time with someone and raising your social links. It's like, it's the same thing, but it's very comfortable. It's fun. And I really, really enjoy it. Hashim Barakat wrote in and said, "Good day, Sacred Gents. Metaphor ReFantazio's amazing story focuses on themes of racism and discrimination and is highly praised almost universally. What makes some stories in video games that focus on social and political issues being panned for being woke, while similar other stories are praised? For as long as art and literature exist, the creators and writers incorporate their own experiences and criticisms of the society they live into their art. Does it depend on their ability to produce their craft or the subtlety of their message? Thank you as always for the wonderful content as always, and wish you all a wonderful week." Thank you for writing in. I really just think good storytelling can be about anything. Mm-hmm. A game like Gone Home, controversial game for no reason really, but it's a real left-wing game. And it doesn't come off like that. And it doesn't really read like that unless you're a culture warrior. It's just really compelling. And right. I loved it, right? And you even think about, what is that game by ZAUM?
Oh,
fuck.
People are screaming right now. Disco Elysium.
What is it?
Disco Elysium,
right. Like Disco Elysium is made by devoutly Marxist people, I guess, like far left people. But I've heard over and over again, because I'm not put off by it for that reason, by the way. I bought it. So it's like, I don't mind owning it. I mean, I've read many left-wing things and many right-wing things. I don't give a shit about any of that. But people say it's actually just really good. Like it's political, but it's not big P political. It's not preaching in some overt sense. Everyone's trying to get something through to you in their writing, but I really just think it's about clever, subtle, real, emotional writing. The reason why things like Dustborn or whatever come off as ham-fisted to people is because it's fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It's a cartoon. And that's cool too, if you want to do that. But there are more subtle ways. Like, I'm often surprised by how political some games are that I don't feel like anyone ever talks about. Even games that you would be like, oh yeah, that's overtly, fashionably political, but not really, like Far Cry 5, which I found deeply political, right? And to me, I'm like, this stuff usually doesn't hit anyone over the head, and I don't think this is going to either. Like, I don't think people are going to walk away. I don't walk away from Metaphor thinking it's political after 25 or so hours into it. It's literally political, I guess, but not, it's human. Yeah. It's a human game. Yeah. And
I think a big element too is just that, and I think you said this, but maybe didn't use the specific word, but I think people are tired of games feeling pandery as well, or overly preachy, like almost to the point where, I mean, I hate to bring this up again, but everyone saw the clip from Dragon Age where there's a 3 to 5 minute conversation where the character are talking about apologizing for using pronouns.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
It feels super forced. It feels poorly written, and it feels like as a player that you're being preached to. And again, if someone wants to write that way, that's fine. But I think that that's the thing that people don't like, is that if you want to write themes into games, make it a more realistic scenario, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's all execution, you know? I think talented people can execute anything. And there's a lot of people who, like, I think just aren't really skilled at writing who are just like, oh, I can do that. And then it just doesn't work. It's like that character in Dragon Age was like, because there's like a conversation in that game where that character is like, oh, well, I'm non-binary. And just those words coming out of some, like, it's not the spiritual concept of like a third nebulous gender goes back so long through like so many different cultures and spiritualities. There's a way to have a character that embodies that without using contemporary words that are obviously just that have no place in that world. You know what I mean? Like you could have done such a better job just conveying the exact same type of character if you just dedicated yourself to the actual grounding of the world that it's in. But instead they were just like, that's a term that's on Twitter. Let's put that in. It's like, it would be like, I don't even know. It would be like if somebody in Skyrim was like, I'm sword maxing. You know what I mean? It's just like, it doesn't, like, you gotta be, you just gotta be better at writing.
It's outrageous.
And I just think that's really what it really comes down to. I have no doubt that, like, I have some people who, like, I know some people who worked on Metaphor, like, at Atlas, and like, there's no, I don't think it's, from their perspective, it is political, but it's also just good. You know what I mean? It's not preachy. It's not pandery. It's like, it's about certain things that from their perspective are from a left-wing philosophy, I guess. I haven't played, I don't know. But ultimately it's good, and so people don't care. I think about music a lot in that regard. It's like, there's a lot of woke music that's, or quote unquote woke. It's not a real word, but like quote unquote woke music from like fucking back in the day, or even just like recently, or like fucking forever ago. That's dope as hell. It's really good. And then there's a lot of it that sucks. It's all execution. All of it.
I agree. I haven't, to be clear, Metaphor is literally political. But
yes, right.
I guess I just don't feel, I feel like it's vaguer than that. It would, I guess what I'm saying is, it would surprise me for something to even read like the description of a Dragon Age or something like that out of a Japanese studio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even feel like that culture exists there in terms of writing like that, talking like that. So even if you get something that is Japanese left wing, it's going to, and I don't know if the Persona games give off that vibe too. I have no idea. I think you're going to get something fairly digestible. And I think that that's what Metaphor is. I think it hits on real feelings. And I want to know where it's going. I'm really intrigued by it, specifically about who the villains are. Like, I don't really understand it. I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something, you know, where I'm like, oh, it's so interesting. I don't really understand where this is all going. I have to sit there and read, you know, they have like the memorandum stuff where there's this deep Final Fantasy 16-esque level of library content where you can just read and read and read and read, like Mass Effect level. And I really should just sit there and do that at some point in the game. I just haven't done so yet. It feels a little unbalanced in that I want more combat, but that's just not what the game really is. I also feel like some dungeons are really fucking easy and some dungeons are like ridiculous. There's that one dungeon early in the game, like, does this thing ever end? It's crazy how long that dungeon is. It feels like the last dungeon in a game. That's how long it was. I was like, Jesus Christ. It was like the end of Dragon Quest XI, where I could not fucking believe that the game just wouldn't end. And I ended up beating it. You guys can look at the timestamp for the platinum trophy, but it's probably at like 5 or 6 in the morning, because I started playing it like I sat down with it probably like 9 or 10 the night before, and I'm like, all right, I'm beating the game tonight. And then it just wouldn't end. I was like at the last dungeon, and then 8 hours later, the sun's coming up, and I'm like, finally, here we are. So I highly recommend Metaphor. We'll have more to say about it. It's going to take more time to get through it. My velocity with playing games is slowing down a little bit. I had a really high velocity for a long time this year, and I ebb and flow like I always have with games, but I'm like playing fewer games, fewer hours now, as football's back, hockey's back, just kind of doing work, a lot of things to do, a lot of things to take care of. So there would be times of the year where I could get 40 or 50 hours a week with a game like this. And now I'm in a mode where I'm getting 15 or 20 at the most. So we'll see. there's not that much coming out that's going to distract me, of course, except for something Errant Rob wrote in and said, "Hey, Slitter Symbols, it's finally arrived. The Slitterhead fans out here in Sacred Symbols land need to know, will anyone on the crew be checking the game out? Everything I've done so far feels like a mix of Gravity Rush meets Soul Sacrifice among a smattering of other games, and I'm curious if this will be a game any one of the crew tackles during the holiday break, as there is admittedly too much to play right now. Thanks for all you do and keep on keeping on." Yeah, I'm going to get it. It comes out the day this podcast releases, which is the 8th will come out. And yeah, man, it's time to convene the itty bitty slitty committee, my friends. So we're going to get it going. We're going to get it going, and I'm going to play it for sure. Are you guys going to play this game? It didn't get very good reviews, but I'm still going to play it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the reviews now and seeing 5 out of 10, 4 out of 10. So it's not one that I'm going to open up my schedule for. And I don't think I would want to buy it full price either. Maybe it's something, it looks like it's not a problem with performance, so it's not something they're going to patch. They're not going to patch the 4 out of 10 out of the game. But
I just don't believe that that's accurate. I'll make a judgment for myself when I play it, but that just seems ridiculous. 4?
Yeah. 4 out of 10. That's from GameSpot. IGN gave it a 5.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, Eurogamer 4 out of 5. So it does seem to have some mixed critical response.
I love my bad games.
Yeah. Well, Eurogamer especially. That Eurojank that they're always trapping on about.
I love that term Eurojank because we all know what it means. We all know the exact games. We all know the studios. And they're all slowly getting, like Metro 2033 is a Eurojank.
For sure.
To a major degree. Awesome game. In some sense, the more refined they became, the worse their games became. In my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, Slitterhead just... Outside of the fact that I'm just desensitized to hearing this fucking this game, and I just like it no longer instills any emotions in me when I hear it. The reviews are not exciting. I don't know. This month's kind of weird. Like I feel like I don't know if there's really anything left. I'm probably going to be on Black Ops for a hot minute. But Stalker's out this month as well.
Yeah, Stalker, PC, so and we won't get that on PlayStation until next year.
Yeah. That might be my next thing, I think.
I'm trying to think of what else. There were a few things, but I don't even remember what they were.
Because that's definitely going to be
that's Neo Fantasian game. I'm definitely going to play that. That's in December.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's
Dragon Quest.
What? Oh, Dragon Quest.
Dragon Quest 3?
Right, Dragon Quest, and a game comes out the same day that I'm also going to play. Those were the two games. I can't think of it because it's November 19 or something, right?
That sounds right.
There's a game that comes out the same day as Dragon Quest that I definitely want to play, but it doesn't matter. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably play it, but fuck you.
Who gives a shit? This. They're like listening to me being like, it's like, we're on like fucking pins and needles over here. We don't need to be. All right, my friends, we're back. Let's get into the news. There are only a couple of bigger news items that I wanted to write out. And really, we don't have to spend too much time on either of these, but I thought that they were deserving of a little bit more consideration. Number one, though it was tacitly somewhat confirmed this past summer, and though the success of the original game demands it, a sequel for the 2023 hit Harry Potter game Hogwarts Legacy is officially in development, and we have some new details about it, thanks to a wide-ranging article on entertainment website Variety. The article itself is about the upcoming avalanche of new Harry Potter-themed media in the pipeline from Warner Brothers, including a much-anticipated HBO revival of the original books in TV format. And though this article is strangely fixated on a Discovery Channel cooking show crossover with the brand, perhaps because it's the most imminent to release, it does get into the weeds just a little bit with Hogwarts Legacy. First of all, the original game, launched in 2023 on PS4 and PS5 and elsewhere, has surpassed a staggering 30 million copies sold, making it, depending on how you look at it, something like the 20th best-selling video game ever made. In the realm of 2019's Call of Duty Modern Warfare, 2012's smash hit Diablo 3, Super Mario Odyssey, Pokemon Gold and Silver, Borderlands 2, and others. It's a remarkable success story for a game that was widely panned in games media for political and social reasons due to its connection with controversial author J.K. Rowling, and was even outright boycotted by certain outlets and others in positions of industry power. However, it's clear that Avalanche Software's ode to the Harry Potter universe was nonetheless a massive hit with fans of the sprawling IP, which until recently it had laid somewhat dormant outside of the Fantastic Beasts spin-off. WB Interactive Entertainment's president David Haddad called a Hogwarts Legacy sequel, quote-unquote, a very big priority internally, going further and telling Variety, quote, "We have known for some time that fans are looking for more things in this world, and so we're spending a lot of time thinking about that. Our insights tell us that there are not a huge distinction between a younger version of a fan and an older version of a fan. They're just deep Harry Potter fans, and we try to build authentic experiences that delight them, end quote. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to say about the game itself, but I thought that quote was very interesting because I think that we're learning that in many ways about a lot of fandoms, that there is some sort of mind meld because it's more normal for older people to be into fictional universes and all, and we grew up with the things that we still love. We grew up with, you grew up with Pokemon or Mario or whatever the fuck you grew up with, Sonic perhaps. I feel like there is less of a gap. Like, what makes good Pokemon for all fans of Pokemon, not just the kids, not just the adults, because the games you're all playing are the same anyway. So I think they've stumbled on something that I think is going to be really powerful for them. And dude, Hogwarts Legacy at 30 million copies is fucking insane.
Yeah.
And shows the cut through power of, I mean, we don't even need this to know that mainstream media coverage is just irrelevant, but they did that with everyone working against them. Certain websites not even covering the game, not reviewing the game, refusing to talk about it, refusing to discuss it, cut through all of that. Now, it's not a huge surprise because it's Harry Potter and it's big, but it goes to show how fruitless that endeavor is. I saw the Kingdom Come Deliverance just passed 8 million copies sold. Remember, that was one of the games everyone tried to kill back in the day.
Yeah.
Too. So yeah, what do you think about? Do you have anything you want to say about this, Chris? Hogwarts Legacy sequel. I would assume 2027 we would see that.
Yeah, maybe.
If they work quick, and I'm sure they'll outsource a lot and get things going on that because it is urgent, and to line it up with the shows, which it seems like that's another important thing, is that they want to line these things up, which is obvious. And I think everyone's now looking to do that as well. So yeah, any thoughts you want to share?
Well, no, I mean, I think it's great for the game. I think that game is an interesting kind of microcosm because I don't think that game is like amazing or particularly like very, very good, but it is one of those things where it's like, if you're into this world, this is like the thing that you've always wanted. You know what I mean? So it's going to hit people like really, really differently. But Harry Potter's massive, whether people online want to believe it or not. Like, dude, I was just at Universal like recently, and like the Harry Potter place is fucking awesome. It's really cool. And it's always packed. Everybody's there, even on like a weekday. So like it's got staying power. It's got recognition. And so, yeah, obviously if you build like a dream game for that crowd, like they're going to flock to it and it's going to get word of mouth and people are going to be like, yeah, why not check it out? So yes, it's selling this much, I guess, surprised me, but I expected it to be kind of like a big thing, you know. As far as like the sequel, I have to imagine they got to work on this immediately, right? Like this is probably the first time we're hearing about it, but I can't imagine that they waited until now to greenlight it.
Yeah, I think they did support it a little bit after. Well, obviously you have to kind of clean the game up afterwards.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine this is well into pre-production at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the next game has the potential to be better and probably a really solid one that actually might cut through even people who don't really like Harry Potter that much. Because the first one's a really solid like foundation for something. I think it's like there's a lot of stuff there that works. There's a lot of stuff that's like a little bit jank and that doesn't really work that well. But you know, if they can flesh it out a little bit more, make it a little bit deeper. I think they have something really special there, and it's going to be a behemoth, no doubt. Like Harry Potter's in for like a massive resurgence in the next 5 to 7 years. I think
should be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Dustin, about Hogwarts, or anything said here about the sales numbers? Anything else strike you?
Yeah, I am excited for a sequel. I really enjoyed the first one quite a bit. The other thing just to remember, I had this in the back of my mind and I looked it up. It is true that on October 11th, Tom Henderson made a report that a Hogwarts Legacy Definitive Edition is in development, that you'll be able to upgrade as a separate DLC with the existing players of the game, or there will be a new version with 10 to 15 hours of additional content. So it looks like they are wanting to squeeze at least the first game a little bit more, if this reporting is true, and it is Tom Henderson, so I believe that it is. So it looks like they will be making even more money off this, because I would certainly buy 10 to 15 hours of additional content if it's good DLC. Absolutely. So I'm very curious about what the next era of Harry Potter looks like with this HBO show. I think that a lot of us that grew up with it are of course, skeptical because we've seen how brands have taken the IPs that we loved growing up and just destroyed them. So there is a little bit of concern.
Yeah.
But so far, I would say the stuff in between has been good, but it hasn't, because those Fantastic Beasts movies are ass, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
and then there was that cursed child thing. What was it? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I didn't read it or see it, and it sounded very, very dumb. So I am skeptical, but I am hopeful for Hogwarts Legacy 2 and curious to see how they'll expand it, just because they've already done Hogwarts itself, of course. So will it be the same map expanded? Will they take us to other schools in the world or other locations, or maybe just a different era of Hogwarts itself? That could also be interesting. So either way, Avalanche, I doubted them big time before this came out, and I was very wrong. So I am rooting for him.
How much do you guys want to bet that in the TV recreation of this of Harry Potter, that there's going to be at least one instance of a kid saying like "no cap" or something?
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's
they shouldn't, because it still should take place in the 90s,
right? But then it's gonna, you know what's weird about it is that it's gonna be like this kind of like bastardization of the 90s. It's kind of like how like Stranger Things is like it's 80s, but like that's not how it was. You know, like
right.
Like the new Harry Potter, if they're like it needs to take place in the 90s, is gonna be so 90s or so like fake 90s. You know what I mean?
Even though they take place in the 90s, because they're in the wizarding world, which feels super old. It doesn't, like, you can watch those movies today, and of course the production value, especially in the early ones, feel early 2000s, but
for sure,
they don't feel like it's set in the 90s. I guess they feel kind of timeless in that way, but I don't know. I would hope I think that I don't know.
Harry, why are you trying to raise up my girl, Harry?
Harry looks at Voldemort and he's like, let's settle this once and for all. Sigma to Sigma. Something like that.
Yeah, there's a floss dance. I'm going to kill
myself.
Sigma.
Sigma to Sigma.
Sigma. Oh, God help us all. God help.
I'm shot, dude. Hey, quick postscript about this is just shout out to Avalanche.
Yeah.
They came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they've been working with WB for a long time. They did a lot of really meaningful stuff. But yeah, it's specifically with Disney Infinity, of course, but it's amazing that they made a game that sold 30 million copies. That's so many copies. It's just an extraordinary amount of copies of a game. And shout out, I mean, you don't want to give corporations too many. You don't want to shout out. Let's acknowledge that Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling or Rowling, I don't even remember which one it was, is so important to their bottom line, and their licensing of that product is so important that they're like, like no matter what controversy surrounds him, like that. I think it just goes to show, regardless of how you feel about it, I'm not saying that at all. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
The imperviousness of money is pretty remarkable. If she controls Harry Potter, so they have to work with her, and they got to just kind of deal with it. And we learned that with Hogwarts Legacy, and we learned that with that too. And I just think that's so interesting, because there's a line probably where if you fall below the line of profitability, or at least isn't enough profit, they will just be like, nah, we don't want the controversy, whatever the controversy is. But this is an example of a major multimedia corporation working with someone that is extremely controversial, and maybe more controversial than anyone that any of these companies work with, deserved or undeserved. I just think that's an interesting observation. Especially with the HBO show coming out.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2, this flew under the radar. A lot of people aren't talking about this. An interesting post is circulating on Reddit that seems to definitively indicate that Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition is coming to PlayStation platforms. This is remarkable, of course, because Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition is an Xbox Studios game, and should it be the next Xbox title to come to PlayStation, it'll mark the 6th major Xbox or post-acquisition Bethesda release on Sony's platforms, the continuation of a truly new way of doing business between the two firms. The leak is simple enough. A screenshot from the game shows people with PlayStation logo branding in a lobby, and the screens are certainly real, as are the players who are captured in what appears to be some sort of limited closed beta. This actually comports with information from The Verge's Tom Warren from earlier this year, in which he reported that Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition was potentially slated to launch on PlayStation 5, specifically in early 2025, as part of the so-called Project Latitude initiative at Microsoft that's seeing previously exclusive games migrate to other platforms like PS4, PS5, and Nintendo Switch. Age of Empires is an old Microsoft PC-centric RTS franchise that began in 1997, and the original Age of Empires 2, The Age of Kings, launched on PC in 1999 and actually had a limited PlayStation 2 release in certain territories outside of the United States, which itself launched in 2001 and 2002. The series has since continued on with some more mainline games and a ton of expansions, the most recent core release being Age of Empires 4, launching on PC in 2021 and Xbox consoles in 2023. Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, on the other hand, launched on PC in 2019 and on Xbox consoles in 2023 as well, and comes by way of Xbox Studios' aligned studio, World's Edge, which Microsoft founded internally back in 2019. It's a well-regarded game across platforms and should be at home on PlayStation 5, especially as it should be assumed that the Xbox iteration's mouse and keyboard support will carry over, and clearly the leaks indicate crossplay is in the works as well. Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition will join the ranks of As Dusk Falls, a second-party title, as well as other first-party games Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded, Pentiment, and Sea of Thieves on PS5, if the rumors are true. It's unclear which other games are in the works from Xbox for PlayStation, apart from Indiana Jones from Machine Games, due out on PS5 in the spring after launching on PC and Xbox this December, and the next Doom game, due from id Software across multiple platforms at launch next year, including PS5. Do you guys care about... First of all, I don't know why no one's talking about this. It doesn't seem like it's being reported very widely.
Yeah.
But do you guys have any thoughts about this? Are you in? I'm not even really in RTS, so I'm not going to play this one way or the other. But
yeah,
anything for you here, Chris?
No, I think I understand why. It is kind of one of those games that doesn't feel as consequential, because it does feel like a game that is mostly like PC centric. You know, I would imagine anyway, based on like my history with RTSs and what they are, that they would just have like a broader appeal on PC than on console. So it kind of just seems to make sense that it would come to a bigger console platform. It's like, yeah, why not? It does kind of feel like an afterthought. So, and also just like, again, Age of Empires, I feel like this is a very big game for a very specific group of people. And I could see why something like this might fly under the radar, honestly.
What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, well, I was looking up this, and someone in a comment pointed out this won't be the first time Age of Empires 2 has come to a PlayStation platform, because it came to PlayStation 2 with mouse support, actually, which is kind of interesting. But I believe, at least looking at the box, that was published by Konami. So a little bit of a different situation now, but still funny to think about. Yeah, Age of Empires has always kind of passed me by, in that my RTS game of choice was Stronghold on the PC, so I never actually played Age of Empires, but I know that was the more popular choice overall and more successful game of this type. But it's cool to see it come over. I know that the people that are fans of this game love this game and have poured many, many hours into it. I'm curious. Hopefully it has mouse support. I would imagine. I just playing a game like this on console isn't, I would say, the ideal situation. But hey, if you got a wireless mouse and keyboard sitting on calling on your lazy boy, maybe that's maybe that's the move. In fact, when Civ comes out, Colin, you play that on PS5. Maybe that's the time you try the keyboard and mouse support.
Yeah, I think I might, because my problem with Civ on console, I thought Civ translated pretty well to console, actually, because it's not real time, but it's not the interface. It's just everything being so small. You know, there's just so many options. So I'm not even sure like a mouse specifically would be nice. Like, you don't even need a keyboard. I don't even think I ever played Civ with a keyboard, but definitely with a mouse.
Well,
you know, because you're just kind of scrolling around, you're pulling on the screen.
Yeah, the issue is that there's so much on screen at any given time, because they assume you're playing on a monitor where you're close up and you can see it.
Right.
And that's always been kind of like that's always been the awkward kind of middle that the awkward kind of growing pains between like the ports from one platform to the other, especially games that are like more PC centric to console. I've noticed that too. There's even some shooters that are like that where the font is so small. And you're like, what the fuck? I remember back in the days before there was like a lot of accessibility and you couldn't change the font size. And you're like, what the fuck are they saying? But yeah, I think because there's a history of Age of Empires already kind of going to PlayStation, maybe just people were just like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I don't know.
It's just the next domino to fall. You know?
Yeah, it's the next, and it's just not a sexy domino. You know, it's not like, ooh, hey, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, Gears. It's not one of the things that people are like eagerly awaiting for. So it's Age of Empires. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, all right, here you go.
Well, it seems like that's going to be coming in early 2025. I wonder when they'll acknowledge it. It was really weird seeing the screens. People did the legwork of saying like, these are real players. Here's like their stuff on the website and all of that. The PlayStation logos are as clear as day. So, and they're not developers. So there's some sort of seemingly some sort of closed, very secret thing going on with that game right now. And we'll keep an eye out for more as that leak, that trickle turns into more of a stream. But Age of Empires 2, I could give a shit. I mean, I'm not going to play it.
No.
All right. Let's get into listener inquiries. Wrap this thing up. 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience over on patreon.com/laststandmedia. You write in on the weekly news, the weekly thread in the news feed. I can never say it properly because I'm an idiot. And then you write in, I go through that, I delete it, put up a one the next week. So keep an eye out for that. We do that for all of our shows, by the way. That's how we interact with you. Jared R. wrote in about something a lot of people wrote in about. And I promised earlier in the show that I would keep the political conversation to places where you can find them. And it's not going to be partisan, but we're going to talk about some political stuff now. I think you'll understand why. And I didn't want to ignore this stuff because it has been bothering me, though I think the way that this person frames it is a little bit different than what is bothering me and who is bothering me and what is bothering me. He says, "Hey, Sacred Crew. Colin, I know this is a big ask, but I'd love to hear your take on Greg Miller and Kinda Funny's endorsement of Kamala Harris. I realize that, by the way, I think it's Kamala Harris. I've had to unlearn that.
Yeah.
Why didn't they say anything sooner? Or maybe they did and I just didn't know. I realize there are lots of reasons you might not want to address it, but as someone who voted for Harris, I feel like this reflects bigger issues in both politics and games media. And I really value your take along with Chris and Dustin's too. Greg tweeted that people should vote for Harris as a personal favor to him, which feels like a heavy-handed use of parasocial relationships, even compared to other politically outspoken people in the gaming space. Between that and Kinda Funny as a company making political ads for a campaign, it seems like a potential start of a shift for games media to be even more political with a capital P than ever before. Of course, everyone has the right to speak their mind, but what does this approach say about the gap between the media voices and the gaming world and the politically diverse gaming community? Are we about to see an even deeper partisan divide in gaming culture as more election cycles come? And more active involvement in campaigns. A few months ago, I wouldn't have thought that this was possible, but the surprises keep coming. Thanks for all the great content. I'll hang up and listen now. So many people wrote in about this and have been poking and prodding about it and circulating it. Not only about Greg and Kinda Funny, and that's what I was saying earlier about the framing. Like everyone's framing it, I think for obvious reasons through that lens. But for me, I really got tired of just seeing it shoved down my throat everywhere at all times by everyone. As people know, I just turned 40 and I've gotten older and I've gotten wiser. And one of the things that I've really realized, and this is of course linear and obvious, but the older you get, the smarter you get. The more you look back at things and you're like, that could have been done differently. That was dumb. That was annoying. That was right. That was whatever. And I become more reflective, and I think I've become more honed in and wiser on the way I conduct myself, the things that I talk about, the product that I try to deliver. Me at 25 and me at 30 and me at 35 and me at 40 are just totally different, in my opinion, in a lot of different ways. I am a political person, deeply political person. I have been really almost my entire life. I was saying on the episode with Hogue, my parents are both very political. My mom's a Democrat and my dad's a Republican. And we just grew up in and they used to joke about canceling each other's votes out. And it was never contentious, but there was a lot of politics. And I was, newspapers, periodicals, magazines, books. As I've said over and over again ad nauseum, I got really into politics as a kid by reading Newsday, Long Island's newspaper, every day during Desert Storm with my dad and going over the maps. I was obsessed with the maps. And my dad then bought me like this huge world map and a United States map, and I had them on my wall. And that's how it all ballooned into this person who's really into it. And I don't begrudge anyone their own political feelings or their freedom to express those political opinions anywhere they want. I mean, that is freedom of expression. And I don't begrudge you that. I really don't. But I think as I've gotten older, I've tried to be more selective about what I talk about when I talk about it, to try not to alienate people that aren't looking to be alienated. In other words, if you're going into political content, you put on fucking Jimmy Dore or Breaking Points or the Young Turks or whatever, you know what you're getting into and why you're there. It would be weird for them to have conversations about video games there. You're going there for deeply partisan politics. I think I've been very intentional with all my PlayStation podcasts over time, Podcast Beyond, PS I Love You, and now Sacred, that the show's never been exclusionary. The shows have never been exclusionary on a political basis. And I've never tried, especially with Sacred Symbols, to wedge in just random shit to say my piece about something. It just doesn't happen. I try to make it so that we're either joking about things or things are coming up, offhanded, or we're talking about things that are totally related to the industry. We got into that deeply with the FTC for a long time. Trade, tariffs, cost of living, all these things matter and they're going to come up. Video games are art, so they're going to interface with culture. They are a part of culture, and culture interfaces with the economy. This is all interconnected. But I think in my opinion, it's a bridge too far for me to tell someone how to vote. And if you go back a long time in my content, you won't really find me telling you how to vote. You'll see me telling you how I'm going to vote. There are even skits at IGN with me in a Mitt Romney shirt as part of the joke of like a skit we were doing, right?
Right.
But I always felt like, and I don't say this as being like, oh, it's a defensive posture. It's just like, I am so used to in game culture defending my positions that I have become somewhat inoculated to the idea that I could even change anyone's mind. All I know is that I have my own opinions, and I kind of dissuaded myself a long time ago of thinking that I'm going to change much. I'm also much more into history and politics as a system than people and parties. The only politician that I ever really, truly, 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 truly loved was Ron Paul. Like the person that like, I was like, I will ride or die forever with Ron Paul. I loved him. He was a major, he was what made me anti-war and all of the rest. Like he's an informative person for me. But it would be hard for me to look at any of the politicians that are being presented to us today or the parties or the way they're constructed or whatever and be like, yeah, I'm willing to not only endorse this 100%, but then put my reputation and myself on the line to ask other people to listen to me in this regard. And I just feel uncomfortable doing that. I don't think it's appropriate. And I got really tired of every fucking person in my feed telling me how I'm supposed to vote. Every musician, politicians, of course, but every musician, every person in video games industry, every sports analyst, some people in, this guy wearing this on the field, this guy wearing this on the field, saying this in his interviews. Like, everyone just shut up. Sometimes it's not that you don't have the right to do it. No one's saying that. It's that like people don't opt in for this kind of content to hear that shit. Mm-hmm. And I've learned that the hard way over the years, but I've known that for years now. And I just think, why alienate and isolate and exclude people? I don't want to do that. It's just a bridge too far. I voted, Dustin voted, Chris voted. It's up to each individual to kind of cast their vote and feel the way they do, and we all do. But we as a company, we as a show, are never going to ask you to listen to who we think you should vote for.
Yeah.
Why does it doesn't matter? Like, it doesn't matter who I think you should vote for. I don't think you should vote for anyone. I just think you should vote and hope that you did. So I don't know, man. People are entitled to do their own thing. And I don't know Greg anymore. Like we don't talk. We haven't talked really in any meaningful way for many years at this point. It's hardest for me to believe that from the perspective of he never cared about politics at all and would almost go flat-faced and long stare-eyed when I would bring up anything. Like I just knew over time he didn't care about any of that stuff. And that's totally fine. Being apolitical is an option and a choice. So for me as a person, it's more shocking from that perspective. But I think from an audience perspective, it's just shocking. It's not shocking. It's just disappointing in the sense that I don't want people to come to these shows and feel alienated from them. And it's not a business decision. It's like a personal decision. I'm not trying to make that kind of content. I don't want to. I was in that world for a little while. It's horrible. Truly. And what I mean by that is like the political content world. It's a fucking nightmare. And I don't want that kind of audience. And I don't want, dude, I was going through our exit surveys. We always talk about these on Patreon. When you leave, you can leave a little option. And a couple of people left because of the election. And I'm like, what did we do? What are you talking about? What does that have to do with us? Now you can leave. You have the freedom to leave for whatever reason you want. But that struck me as weird. I'm like, what was I supposed to do? I don't want to make content with a gun held to my head. And I won't do it. I was telling this to Gene when Washington Post lost a bunch of subscribers that were upset about the decisions they were making. And I'm like, you've lost the subscribers that were holding a gun to your head. You can't make content under that because there's just expectations of the outcome. What is the point? What is the point? So people can do that stuff wherever they want. More power to you. If you're looking to your podcasters and your celebrities and your whatever that you're a fan of to speak out on that stuff, more power to you and more power to them. But the older I get, the more anathema it comes to everything I believe in, the entire structure that we're trying to build at Last Stand. I don't care who you voted for. And the outcome of the podcast or the outcome of the election has no bearing on this podcast. I'm sorry I'm going on and on, but
no.
So people frame it again around Greg and Kind of Funny, and that's fine, and I get it, but it really is about everything. I feel like I want to be different. I want to do intentional political content when necessary, clearly labeled and directed towards someone. I'm not trying to fucking jump it like a fucking highwayman, jump at you from the trees during a video game podcast and be like, by the way, let's get political. Come on. And so that's it. I mean, that's all I have to say about it. I hope that makes sense to people. Mm-hmm. There are some people that are disappointed that we didn't say anything for both candidates. And by the way, my favorite thing was seeing people arguing both ends in my Twitter feed as I saw this when I tweeted out about, our stance in some sense a little bit earlier. People saying I'm voting for one person, I'm voting for the other, and both of them being positive that they were right. And I'm like, exactly. It's great. Both of them being totally confident. And that's kind of what I'm going for. So whether you're a Harris person or a Democrat or a Trump person, a Republican or whatever you are, apolitical, certainly overseas, whatever, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. And I don't care who you voted for. And I don't care if you voted. And I don't care what you feel about the positions. It's not about that. I'm not your dad. People are looking for fatherly energy, I feel like.
Yeah.
In some sense. Or motherly, matron.
Oh, well, that's clearly the case. Yeah.
So, do you have anything you guys want to add on this? Do we make the right choice?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just that I'll add to the aspect, because I totally agree that I love that. I love the fact that we are in the position where it's like across our company, diverse political views, but it doesn't feel like anyone's trying to convince anyone of anything. And as far as Kind of Funny and Greg, the main thing that I want to put out there is that, yeah, I personally believe that him doing that is a bad business decision. I think it also maybe somewhat morally dubious. But as Colin said, I don't think that like if he wants to operate that way, no problem with that. And I think that what I would argue right now is just that if he wants to do that, then I think people should just let him do it.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for a lot of the conversation right now is just that, and maybe this doesn't even apply to the write-in, but like we got to lower the temperature quite a bit. I wanted to share this just because I couldn't believe it, and I feel so bad for this person. But Colin, you mentioned the exit surveys.
Mm-hmm.
The day after the election, someone wrote in and said, "Guess why I'm leaving? Your son wouldn't be proud of you, Dustin Furman." Which, keep in mind, never once shared who I was voting for, and let alone a Greg Miller style endorsement.
Yeah.
Calm down. Like, just across the board. Calm down. Obviously, this person is unhinged. What they said, it's not like I'm even entertaining something that they said, but it's really sad to see that state of affairs. So, as I would ask for respect to everybody in the situation, us, but also to Greg and other people that are that way. It's just like, you don't need to be a dickhead, even if you disagree with that stance, right? If you don't like it, if you feel alienated by Kinda Funny or any, musician, commentator, whatever, then stop listening to them, unfollow them, don't watch their content. You don't have to be on a crusade against everything that you don't believe in.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think it cuts both ways in the sense that I do think that there are there are a number of babies that cut in the other direction where it's like anything that comes up that touches on politics. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, no, it matters. This is a video game podcast. Right. It matters how games are made. It matters how they're sold. It matters who makes them and under what circumstances. It matters how they're funded. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's just making sure so that shit is just baby behavior. Like, and I have no tolerance. And I've never had any tolerance for that. Like, it's going to come up. If you don't understand why those things come up, you're out of your mind. Go fucking bang action figures together in a corner somewhere and build your Legos. Like, I don't know what you want me to do about that. That's not my problem. But on the other hand, and it's the bigger problem, is just people injecting things into all spaces. Like, why alienate everyone like that? Like, who are you convincing? That's the thing I think about is like, okay, so I tell you who I think you should vote for. Who's going to listen to me? So like, what kind of cost are you paying and what kind of value are you extracting from that? So even if you just think about it totally logically, Randian, like, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm just totally, I have no dude, I don't begrudge anyone doing anything they want. I'm so overwhelmed by it now. Everywhere you look,
right,
it's someone telling you what to do, how to feel, instead of just giving you the information and treating you like an adult. And if you want political opinions, go listen to fucking NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. Like, I don't know what you want from me. But I'm so glad, especially after everything. It's just like, I'm glad we didn't say or do anything. And there was nothing to say or do. It was never even a decision. It was obvious. It only became something to talk about as I was more and more inundated with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Sports and music, and movie stars. And it's like, oh my God, dude, stop. You're patronizing me now. Like, patronizing, I guess I should say.
Yeah. I don't know. Temperature should go down. It will not, because the unfortunate reality is, and this is true, I think it's objectively true, whether you like Trump or not, you have to acknowledge the obvious reality is that he is an asshole, and he does speak in a really matter-of-fact, uncaring way about most things that he talks about. And if that's the leader, then what we've done now is basically, we've cemented the idea that works. even just the idea of like kind of talking about like, well, should Greg act this way or should other people act this way? It's like we put somebody in power who acts this way. So like who acts worse. So like, I don't know. Even if you agree with him, I'm saying like the personality, like the overall, vibe of the guy. This is the new baseline. And so everybody's going to be like, well, being a dickhead works, so fuck it. I really think that's what's happening now, and it's going to get so much worse. And we'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that like
it's going to be so much worse.
I just want to underline in bold the idea that politics are good. You should have a political stance. You should be informed, and you got to make your own decisions. That's part of being human. As I said earlier in the show, and I know I've said behind the scenes to you guys, and I said it to Hogue, the amount of overt partisan politics doesn't make me want to dodge politics. It makes me want to put my shoulder and lean into the idea of doing useful content in a world that is going to, as I think, Chris, you suggest, going to get worse in this regard. And so you got to cut through the noise and find the signal and take things on a case-by-case basis and explain your reasoning and be patient and appreciate that people are going to disagree. And this is only in the realm of games. I mean, imagine how bad it's going to be elsewhere. So I think it's just, all I'm saying is I think this is an age thing for me, because I think I was in a much different place, in previous elections. And so I can understand other people being in different places too. But certainly in the last 3 elections or so, I've been in pretty much the same place. So it's not really that different. And especially 2016, because I was supporting a third party candidate. So I didn't give a fuck. Like, it was like, whatever, man. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I wanted to speak on that. I didn't want to ignore you guys because a lot of you wrote in about that, and I understand that. And I just felt like it would be disingenuous for me to not even confront it. But again, I don't think it has anything to really do with Greg and Kind of Funny as much as it just has to do with, from my perspective, like what I've been inundated with. It was just endless nonsense. And I want to give people a respite from it if I can. And I appreciate that people want that. And so when we do a constellation, the next constellation episode is going to be all about the election. It's going to be deeply political. That's opting into something. You know what you're getting into. It's not something else. It's a conversational podcast. It's not dedicating the PlayStation podcast to politics. These are just different things. That's why I saw some reactions to people saying like, oh, Colin gets into politics all the time. I'm like, yeah, in Constellation, we do it. We dedicate episodes to it just to get it all out. So you can look forward to that if you want to listen to that. But otherwise, I don't want to be repetitive. I just, I think that we made the right choice. And I could give a fuck what Kind of Funny Greg does. Really, it's more about just the overarching nature of how much everyone was trying to shove shit down your throat, and how, by the way, irrelevant it was. So again, just what kind of juice did you get out of the squeeze? What was it worth it? I remember Kind of Funny telling Trump voters, I think in 2020, just to not watch or be with them anymore. I'm pretty sure that they said that or something like that. And it's like, why? So I'm not going to do that. So thank you guys for your patience. All right. Connor Reese wrote in and said, greetings, gentlemen. Who is the modern audience? We hear a lot from developers and publishers about how they are creating something for the modern audience, but what does that actually mean? Who is that? Is it Gen Z and younger? Is it people who grew up in the 90s and are now in our late 20s and 30s? Is it something more political than that? I asked the Dukes the same question, and I hope to hear your response as well. Cheers, and have a great weekend. Chris, who is the modern audience?
I think it actually literally translates to like low attention span. I like literally, like actually, like I've seen I don't remember what video I was watching, but I've heard this from other people like in the industry too, where like there's a general idea now. If you're making like a Netflix documentary that's like or like a Netflix movie about like a real thing that happened, like it's better to make it like a 6-part miniseries or something. And if you repeat yourself over and over again, that's fine, because we expect people to be looking down at their phones as they're watching anyway. So like that is the expectation when people, that's why you see a lot of documentaries that could be like 1 hour or like one movie spread out into like several parts. I don't know if you've seen this personally on your like in your watch history or whatever, but there's like a lot of like mini series that really could be fucking trimmed the fuck down because a lot of it is just repeat information. They expect people not to be paying attention. I know that's TV, but that is kind of like a video game thing too. I think more live service oriented kind of, game mechanics and design philosophies. They're just like, let's keep people engaged. I think that's what people are talking about when they say that. I don't know if that's necessarily what always ends up at the end of the pipeline, but I don't see any other interpretation of it because it's not political, because clearly like nobody really cares. Hogwarts Legacy sells like a boatload, and even I'm sure people bought Hogwarts Legacy who don't agree with J.K. Rowling, and they're just like, I don't know, that's a fucking Harry Potter game. Who cares? It's good. Right. Yeah, I'll play it. And I think that's how most people feel. So I don't know. It really depends on how. I'm really cognizant of terms like modern audience and just terms that we get filtered through games media or filtered through press releases that might have a different literal translation or different literal meaning to the people at the very, very top who initially instate it. I think about like that happened a lot. I mean, piggybacking off of the last question, that happened a lot with a lot of like political terminology in like 2015, 2014, 2016, where there was a lot of like academic language that was like being filtered through BuzzFeed into this like weird Frankenstein version of what it actually meant when it had nothing to do with the actual original concept. I don't know what modern audience means, but I have to assume logically that would have to be a big part of it. It's like live service, deep engagement, keep people in the game. Like, okay, like let's have a seasonal model. So like, they don't really have time to go elsewhere. That's kind of, yeah. In games where it's single player, I really have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. Makes no sense to me what a modern audience is for a single player game. That's just the audience.
Maybe about its sensibilities. Yeah. Any more than that, it wouldn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
Dustin, what are your thoughts here on the modern audience, the definition?
Yeah. Well, I have a different view, but I don't think Chris is wrong, because I definitely think that is an angle of the modern audience as far as dumbing things down, making it easier if you're not paying attention to be invested or whatever. I think another way to look at it, and I think these both can simultaneously be true, is I think of something like Resident Evil 2, the original PlayStation 1 game. It was remade for a modern audience. Like, okay, so what does that actually mean? It's like, okay, well, the graphics are many, many times better because a modern audience, so we'll say like a broad audience as well, doesn't want a game in 2024 or whatever year that came out that looks like a PlayStation 1 game overall. Yeah. There are people in this day and age that don't want tank controls. They want a third person over the shoulder perspective. Things like that, I think, are kind of a way of thinking about a modern audience. And certainly, yeah, there are still games that come out that stylistically have a certain look to it of a previous era. But by and large, that's not how games are made now. Yeah. So I think it's, when they're talking about something coming back for a modern audience, it's like, okay, well, when we remaster Croc, it's not going to have tank controls anymore. We're going to add an option for you to not have to suffer with tank controls. I think that's probably a large portion of this modern audience aspect.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think, the over the shoulder, like the God of Warification of things. I think it's like people like this. People like this over the camera thing or over the shoulder camera. People are, and to be fair, like games like Crow Country that do come out, like that are made to emulate old style games, those are almost definitionally not for modern audiences. They're actually specifically for older audiences.
And even then too, if you think about a game that's trying to emulate an old style that you would say isn't for a modern audience, they still have quality of life features that are for modern audiences. Right. Yeah. Like if you die too many times in Shovel Knight, it doesn't restart the game. Right. Or like an original NES game would. And I know there's some that had saves or whatever, but there are still plenty of modern audience features in these games that are older styled as well. So I think about like Silent Hill 2, because this was a big conversation that I'm excited to be a part of once I play it. But there was an argument of like, well, they should have just done a straight remake and kept the fixed camera positions and kept this exactly the same. And it's like, yeah, you could do that, but it's not going to be for a modern audience. It's not going to be a broad range of people that want that. It's not going to be successful because it just isn't to modern tastes to have it be exactly like Silent Hill 2, the original. So I think that's, about it.
Yeah.
All right. Connor, thank you for writing in. William from down in North Carolina wrote in. Down there. So good folks. In a recent patch, EA slipped in real-world advertisements into the fake social media feed of the FC25 Manager career mode. On one hand, these Tim Apple-approved Beats speaker ads could provide a revenue stream to single-player mode and shift development focus. On the other hand, no thank you. What are your thoughts? Y'all take care now. William, I had to take this inquiry because it scratched something in me, and we brought this up in previous episodes in previous ways, but this is an example of a company doing something where they are making or saving money, but they make it seem like they're doing it to make something more authentic or real, or they're doing it for an ulterior reason. What came to mind for me is, and this makes me rage out, is in hotels. It's like, if you want your sheets changed and leave this card on the bed. And if you want your towels changed, just throw them on the ground. And that will signal to us that you actually want us to change them. I'm like, listen. And then they'll be like, this is part of our, Hyatt's green initiative to use less water and less electricity. And I'm like, hey, assholes. You and I both know that you're just not doing it primarily to save money. And I would respect more if you were like, hey, if we don't wash your sheets and your towels while you're here, we'll take like 3% off your bill. And we'll both save a little money. Instead, you pitch it as something that it isn't in order to kind of just get an extra boost of marketing out of it or whatever. And this is what this is. It's going to be more realistic to have in your fictional social media feed in Football Club 25, random ads and things that make it feel real. I mean, you even see that in fictional ways, fictional ads in fake social media feeds. But they're going to say like, if they're asked about it, then no one's going to ask them about it because no one asks any hard questions of any of these people when they have access to them. But they could ask them like, so what the fuck's that all about? It's the same thing with the, you watch soccer games and it's like the huge banner ads around the field. And they have those in the game. They've had those in the games forever with real ads on them. And it's like, yeah, that adds to the realism. And it's, that meme with Posh Spice and her husband, David Beckham, and he's like peeking through the door. And she says something, what I'm talking about, back and forth. It's like that, where it's like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, we're making a more realistic experience. What are you doing? Oh, we're, just trying to make a little, we want a little bit of balance. What are you really doing? Oh, we're just trying to make money. It's like, yeah, just get it out. That's the kind of shit that bothers me. So I had to bring this up, William, because it reminds me of that same disingenuousness you see with other major corporations where they can't just be real. And say, like, listen, assholes, your towels probably don't really need to be washed after you use them once. If you really, really want to, throw them on the ground, but maybe hang them up. It helps us save money. And hey, listen, if our maid doesn't have to come into this room at all while you're here, we'll give you 5% off your bill.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. They don't give a shit about anything else. So anyway, that's how I feel about that. William, from down in North Carolina. Oh, he's down there. Yeah. Thank you for writing in. Lawrence Allen wrote in and said, hello, CDC, longtime listener, first-time Patreon subscriber. My question, could you see yourself in a long-term relationship with someone who didn't share your love for games? I know Colin has Micah and Dustin has Holly, both of whom enjoy gaming. So I'm curious how you'd feel dating someone without that passion. Would it be a deal breaker for you if they didn't love games? I'm 30, a lifelong gamer since the N64, but in late 2019, I felt jaded and took a gaming break until early 2024. During that time, I met my now wife, who has zero interest in games. It's fine. We can each have our own passions, and while it would be nice to have a partner to play games with, it isn't a huge deal for me. But it did get me wondering what the Sacred Symbols gang thought about this. P.S. The break was actually refreshing, and it's great to return to discounted games and love them again. Lawrence, thank you for writing in. Micah is the first person I had ever dated in my entire life that played games, like really played them. And it doesn't matter in some sense. Like the reason that I wasn't with previous women that I dated has nothing to do with them not playing video games. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So that was like an irrelevance, really. And in a couple cases, they kind of got into games a little bit because of me. I don't think that they still play now, but they would play on their own. So I didn't think it mattered. I really always leaned in my life into like opposites attract. You know, like I dated a sorority girl in college, right? And like things that are like polar opposite of your space and your time, really. Thinking that was kind of the Twainish wisdom of how you find happiness. And what I've found instead is that that's not really true. I mean, they do attract in some sense to a degree, but you have to have like some sort of like-mindedness and similar temperament and all those kinds of things to really find peace. And I've actually just found with games and our shared love of games, Mike and I don't play games together. We often play games at the same time or one's playing and the other's not doing it or whatever, but it opens up a whole different world of understanding of what you're even doing. If she's sitting in front of a TV for 10 hours playing a game she's really enamored with, I understand that. But like someone else might understand that happens, but they don't get it. And so right. I think it is relatively, I don't want to say it is. For me, it has been relatively important, but I never realized it would have been. But at the same time, you said it yourself. You don't need to share those. You got to have separate passions. You just need to be sure you have the things that bind you. You know. So Dustin, does it play into your relationship at all?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is that I think you can totally have a relationship with someone who doesn't care. I guess isn't interested in your specific passions, right? Because there's some things that I'm into still outside of video games that I really like. Holly doesn't care about. There's things that Holly likes that I don't care about.
Give me some examples of both of those.
Things that I care. I really care about watching, like learning about technology. Like I'll watch MKBHD on a MacBook that I'm not going to buy just because I find it interesting. She's bored out of her mind. She hates that. Holly really likes opera because she is a classically trained singer. I don't care about opera. I don't hate it. But the key about these two factors is that the respect for one another in those individual passions. I've heard of relationships where a guy feels embarrassed or like he can't play video games because his girlfriend says, "Oh, video games give me the ick," or something, some stupid thing like that. And I think that can be the case for some smaller things. But if you are passionate about video games or anything else, and this other person blatantly mocks it or hates it, I think then you can deal with some issues long term. It might be something that's funny and cute at first, but later on, I think that could be a problem. And sure, there are small things like Holly, like there are things that I make fun of Holly for liking, but they're small. Holly loves wicker baskets. She always sees them at the thrift store. She comes home with them. They're littered all over my house, and I fucking hate them. And I'm like, Holly, no more wicker baskets. I can't deal with this shit. Or you got to get rid of a few. Something like that. It's funny. Whatever. But if every time I sat down to enjoy the number one hobby and I got a glare or rolled eyes or something like that, for the rest of my life, that's going to eventually lead to conflict. So that's what I would say. Opposites, fine, but you have to still have mutual respect.
Chris, where are you on this with your relationships? Is this something you care about?
I don't think it's necessarily important. I do think that like when I've dated people and they're not into games, I usually get them into it. Like it just sort of happens naturally at some point. Like they'll see me playing something that piques their interest, or I'll recommend something to them that they're really into. And that's fun for me. Like I like introducing people to things, so I don't necessarily care that much if they're like super into it. I think a little understanding of it would be good. If they have at least one game that they play, like even if it's just like Stardew Valley or something, then I can cool. You know what I mean? That's dope. I don't need more than that really. But I do think it helps. It helps just from a base understanding level. Just like, oh, why are you spending so much time doing this? It's like, oh, you get it. So it helps, but I don't think it's it's not like the primary, or even like, I wouldn't even say it's a necessity for me, you know? It just happened to have been like most of the people that I've dated who never played games. I got into, like, I think I got a text from an ex recently because I got her into Ghost of Tsushima. And she heard about Ghost of Yotei. It's like, is that real? I had to be cool. Yeah, there's so many other avenues that you could have gone to get that information, but I appreciate it. That I'm like the person associated with that now. Where it's just like video games. Cool. And so that's fun. That's really awesome for me. I love that. I love being able to like get people in somehow. But yeah, it's not super important. It's cool. It's a nice perk, I think.
Yeah. It's as you said, I think, and I said too, just to reiterate, it's about just understanding what it is. It's just that goes a really long way, in my opinion. Yeah. It's worth noting though, and because I don't want to sound dramatic, I had never dated anyone that really gave a shit. Like, it wasn't a big deal. Like, you read things with people being like, my girlfriend or my wife hates that I play games and this and that. Like, I never had that. Like, no one was ever like, you got to stop playing games. You can't do it. No one said that to me. So, and I see this stuff about the so-called the ick, like you brought up and all that kind of stuff, which is so funny to me. Like, that wasn't a thing when I was younger.
It's so annoying.
But it's so funny, like, as I get older and gruffer, and I guess whatever, you just see things differently. Like in your early 20s, you know, some hot girl was not into you and she felt that way about you. You'd be like, oh my God, I got to change. And now you would look back at that and be like, who the fuck are you, bitch?
Yeah.
You know, like, cool. You just have different, you just look at things differently back in the day. Yeah. It's like, who gives a fuck what you think? You know? Anyone who judges you by the way of playing video games is a fucking loser. Just know that.
Oh yeah.
100%.
As they have their phones in their faces 12 hours a day. Go fuck yourself. Matt Harris wrote in. That was pretty harsh, huh? Nonetheless.
No,
okay, fair enough. Matt Harris wrote in. Said, good day, gentlemen. Is it just me or has game replayability gone down the drain? I remember getting Mass Effect 2 and smashing through it in a week. As soon as I finished, I instantly wanted to start again with a different class and choices. I can't remember the last time a game made me want to so eager to start the whole thing again. Has my attention span just shortened or have games really gotten worse in regards to replayability? Thanks for the many years of entertainment. I'll hang up and listen now. Thank you, Matt, for writing in. Mass Effect 2, of course, is going to have high replayability because it's a choice-based game. So you're going to see that in any game like that. But I feel like games are pretty highly replayable these days. The thing that bothers me is Sony has a propensity to do this, for instance, is like hiding New Game Plus in a free update in the future and that kind of stuff and getting people to go back to try to claw them in to spend more money or whatever. But I've probably replayed more games in more recent memory than I did when I was younger, and I would typically move on. And except for in the 8-bit and 16-bit era where games were so quick, you'd play them just over and over and over again. So I actually have not seen any deficiency in replayability in the games that I've been playing, but it also really, that depends on the games you're playing and what you're looking at. So I'm sure that people will get different mileage on that opinion. Chris, are we missing replayable games?
I actually think so. I think we've talked about this on the show before, but like, I think there's a lot of bloat in a lot of games, especially AAA, that can feel a little bit daunting. I feel like games start slower than they used to. And so like they also, I feel like they overstay their welcome sometimes. And so by the end of it, you're just like, oh my God, I'm glad to be done with this. And the idea of playing again and starting from that slow beginning, I think about like God of War 2018 a lot, where it's like God of War 2018 was like a really good, like I remember really loving it. But I never really wanted to play it again because the first thing that I would think about is like, I got to swing the axe at the tree and like walk the fucking tree over to the boat and walk cinematically up to my dead wife. And I'm good. I feel like older games, from the very first level, you could skip the cutscene if you wanted to, but you wouldn't be forced to play through it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of cutscenes that we play through now. And so they're the core bits of gameplay that are really like the adrenaline hits, the main reason why you play the game, are not immediately accessible upon replay. And that was what struck me a little bit with some of the more recent remakes of older games that kind of followed. That's is like Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space. Like they start so quickly. And how cool is that? Like that's so sick. And they respect your time. They're so reasonable in their length, like 9 to 14 hours. It's just perfect. And then by the time you're done, it's like, yeah, let's run that back. Let's do it again. I'm into it, because you know that the second you restart, you're gonna be right in it again. I do think there's some bloat. I do think there's like pacing issues. I do think there's like over reliance on this kind of like cinematic approach where it's like we have to make everything feel like a movie. Like, let's have Kratos walk slowly with the fucking tree and absorb the environment and really sell the feel. And it's like, all right, I did this. You sold the feel on. I'm here already. Let me get to the Baldur fight, because that's what I want to start from. You know, when I can do everything. And so I don't think it's like necessarily a universal problem. I think there's a lot of games that come out now that don't necessarily have that problem. But I do think I find it more common than not, where by the time I'm done with the game, I'm like kind of glad to be done with it. And I don't really necessarily have an urge to go back and play it again, versus back in the day. And to be fair, back in my day and back in Colin's day are two different, like we're 10 years apart. So like we have different barometers for what that is. I would imagine, you know, the PS3 360 era was just very, like, in my opinion, just perfectly paced. That was like the era of perfect pacing in video games. And that's something that we've lost. And even the small examples of maybe like slow starts back in those days are still a lot quicker than the slow starts today. The exception is probably like Doom 2016. Like when I was done with Doom 2016, I was like, let's run it back. And then immediately that intro is like, you're right in it again. And it's like, yes, this is perfect. But that's also a game that's designed in some way to harken back to older. You know what I mean? So right. It's case by case basis. And some games are better off for that. Like I remember finishing Red Dead 2 and being like, well, I'm never playing this again, because I remember that snowy section being really, really long and tedious. And to be fair, it's longer and tedious than it should be, but it's not as gruelingly long as I remember it being. So it's case by case, I guess.
Dustin, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that there's an element too that, let's see, this was Matt Harris, that I think in the era of Mass Effect 2 coming out, we were starting to get a pretty good stream of game releases, but still there would be some times where it was, if you were only really buying and playing the biggest games, that you might have not had anything you wanted to play for a while. So the decision to play it again is stronger than going in, you know, if you don't have anything else to go buy and play. So there's that element. I think in general, there's still plenty of games that have so much replayability. Even just recently, something like Elden Ring, you can play again and again with a million different types of builds and get very different experiences, and maybe even see entire portions of the game that you've never seen before. I don't know, Tears of the Kingdom, if you play it again, you have all the knowledge of how to build different things that you didn't the first time you played it, so it'll be different. Baldur's Gate 3, you can play a million different ways and still not see everything that's in the game. So these highly replayable games are still out there. Another element too is just that a lot of us are adults now and don't have as much time to maybe play games. And so when your decision to come to play a game, I guess this kind of comes back to my earlier point, is just that you're not necessarily going to spend your time playing the same games, but play the games that you're interested in. There's so many more games now than there was before. So I think it's a combination of all of those elements combined. But saying that replayability has gone down the drain, I think is not completely true based on those games that I listed.
All right. Final one comes from Sean Willie, who has a very appropriate name. Whoa. Says, "What's up, boys? Just went through with a vasectomy this morning." He capitalized the V in vasectomy. I don't know why I did that. "And the procedure went through without a hitch. I'll be on bed rest listening to this episode while working my way through Metaphor Refantasio for the next few days. I'm pretty stoked to just have some downtime on my couch to game and catch up on TV during my recovery. Any of the Sacred Lads ever have a surgery that allotted you some time to dive into games or media for an extended period? Thanks, and I'll keep fucking that chicken just as soon as my balls are good and ready." Well, Sean, I don't know that I never had any, thank God in my life yet, any really extended bed rest. You obviously get sick for a little while. You watch some shit or whatever. I really relate when Plants vs. Zombies first came to PSN on PS3. which was well after it came to XBLA. I was so excited, and it came out when I was like really sick. I remember that, and that really kept me company. But I just thought it was funny that your name was Sean Willie and you had a vasectomy. So I wanted to make sure to include you. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the only surgery I've had is my wisdom teeth. And the main memory involving games with that is that I got out and we needed to go fill my prescription. So we went to Target. So I was definitely, post-surgery, they put you under. So I'm like high right now. I remember standing in the video game section of Target, and it was like that scene from Ferris Bueller where he's in the museum and he's staring at something, and then it like cuts and it gets closer and closer. That was me, but with a greatest hits copy of Grand Theft Auto 4 for Xbox 360. Just remember staring at it and thinking like, maybe I should buy this. Is it a good deal? Do I want to play this? I've always wanted to play it, but maybe is now the time. And eventually I decided to just buy it. And that was when I played GTA 4 for the first time. I did not finish it, but it was a nice little new game when my mouth was all swollen.
Yeah, I've only been through surgery twice for the same thing. I had like a lymph node biopsy twice, 10 years exactly apart. Not to the day, I guess. But that bed rest wasn't crazy. I was really only like, I think I really only had to like stay in bed for like maybe 3 days before like the surgical glue started to heal or whatever the fuck. And I don't think any games really came out around that time. I do remember what I do remember is the first surgery that I had when I think that was like 2004, 2005. So I was pretty young. And I remember my parents felt so bad that I had to go through it that I managed to guilt a PSP out of them.
Oh, wow.
Like I remember, and that was like and so on the way back from surgery, after they gassed me the fuck up and drugged me, I got the PSP, and I remember playing the PSP in the car. I think I played like Wipeout Pure in a car while I was kind of still high from the drugs that they gave me, and it was awesome. It was the coolest shit ever because you're in like you're in like a car that's already going fast. You're playing Wipeout and you're drugged up, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. But that wasn't really necessarily bed rest. That's just the only memory that I have associated with video games and a surgery. But yeah,
fair enough. All right, Sean Willie, take care of yourself.
Take care of that Willie.
Oh.
Sean Willie.
Yeah. All right. So gross.
We got to wrap this up quick.
Yeah, it's time to go. Did you guys play with these Mr. Sketch scented markers when you were a kid?
Is there like a plastic container that they kind of like slot? Those look familiar.
Like they're like these?
Oh, yeah.
They smell like the different things. I had a lot of nostalgia for this because Mike and I were talking about them. We're like, remember those markers, those Mr. Sketch markers? Sanford owned them when I was a kid, but they're just like their own company now. And so we just randomly bought a box on Amazon. And it's so it is truly brings me back to like 1989. It's crazy. They smell exactly the same. Did you guys? These were like staple markers where I grew up. I don't know if you guys.
I knew kids who had them, but I never had them. I think my parents were concerned that I would eat them.
I felt like
there's
go ahead.
When I just feel like if you make something like that smell good, like you're playing with fire, kind of.
Yeah,
Colin, run your tongue on one.
Is it toxic? I can't imagine that it would be.
Well, that's what we
at this point.
That's what we.
Although maybe soon they will be with all the regulations.
Well, actually, it's funny you asked that because I noticed on the box, I was like, these were non-toxic, right? Like when we were kids, you know how they have that like non-toxic circular branding on like pens and markers, and
right?
Shit? And it doesn't say that anywhere on this box.
Damn.
So it doesn't say they're non-toxic anywhere on them. But and if they're gonna fuck you up, it's like, well, in that case, I'll just smell like a Kingsford fat fucking Kingsford black marker, you know, and get crazy.
Yeah, whatever.
They got to make a scented marker that smells like that, because that or like gasoline, you know, make like a gasoline marker. Like, why did they make gasoline smell so good? Doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah, when they crafted it.
Yeah, when they made it,
do something that was making it smell so good.
Yeah, that was a choice that they made when they made it. They were just like, do we make it smell like? What do we make it smell like?
Well, it's like I got this fat Sharpie, right? Like,
right.
This thing smells so good, dude. Yeah. Doesn't have to.
No.
Yeah, they could, because you think of like the air cans, that they spray, they add a bittering agent,
right?
So people don't huff them. So maybe they can figure out something like that with the smells but then you don't want to use it.
I saw that like huffing is like, and doing that stuff is like coming back.
Oh, the galaxy gas.
The galaxy gas.
Dude, it's crazy. I thought like,
it's insane.
I thought we had all agreed that was so insane that we shouldn't do that. I never did it myself. But that was like a thing more of my generation.
It comes in waves.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's like really gonna fuck you up if you do that. No doubt about it.
Oh well.
You're like every time you do one of those, you forget words and shit. You forget like a distant family member.
Yeah, right. It doesn't seem worth it.
No. All right, dudes. Well, that's it. Let's go around the horn and say goodbye as this Sacred Symbols episode is done. Chris, be well. Have a good rest of your day. Go eat. Are you ready to eat now?
Yeah, I'm pretty hungry. But but at the same time, like, I got the PS5 right behind me.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
I'm probably gonna set that baby up. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna eat. I'm feeling. I don't know what I'm feeling. I want sushi. I think today's a sushi day.
I was gonna say lacrimose. You're feeling lacrimose. Sushi, yeah, that could be interesting. I don't know what we were having for dinner tonight, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'll be looking forward to whatever it is. Micah cooks good food. Dustin, goodbye to you, my friend. Be well.
Goodbye. Tomorrow, or the day of release, I'll be seeing Iron Maiden in Pittsburgh. Hey. I think I talked about this 1 year ago when I bought the tickets.
You've been very patient.
And then I'm going again in Baltimore on Tuesday.
Oh, cool.
So, but
do they play different set lists?
I don't think so. Because they have like a very intricate stage show, basically, that involves, flamethrowers and shit like that. So very excited for that. Should be cool. My whole family's going to the one tomorrow. So Holly and my mom, my uncle, and my dad. So a nice Furman family affair, seeing Maiden. So if you're at those shows, maybe you'll see me in the crowd. Maybe not. Well, just don't John Wilkes Booth me, as we always say at our live shows.
Yeah. Please don't. Be well. Have fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to just settle in for some football tonight. Hang out. Go walk the dogs. It's almost dark already.
Ugh.
So I got to get out there soon. All right. Time to go. We'll be back next week for more Sacred Symbols, PlayStation Podcast.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys. Again, thank you for being here. And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. Patreon.com/LastStandMedia for early ad-free access. LastStandMedia.store for merch. We'll see you next time. Till then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.